My mom used me to plan my sister's dream wedding, then erased me from the guest list. So I showed up at the rehearsal with receipts. "You're not coming to the wedding," Mom texted. "Mia's family doesn't want you there." That was it. No sorry, or, "I hope you understand." Just harsh white letters on a gray bubble. I read it twice, then again. My fingers hesitated over the screen as my coffee cooled beside me. "So you chose status over blood?" I texted it. No emoji, no sarcasm, just the truth. Then, without hesitation, I opened my laptop, signed into the wedding planner's account, and canceled the venue deposit. It was in my name and paid with my card. They didn't even realize it. What is the best part? It was non-refundable. I closed the laptop, leaned back in my chair, and stared at the wall. I didn't feel angry yet. Not even sad. Just be still. As if something inside me had swapped positions and was now seeing from a different perspective. They have done this before. Not as a parent, not in all caps. But I felt it in the side glances, the jokes at dinners, and the fact that they forgot my birthday 3 years in a row and blamed the group chat algorithm. The way Mia became the daughter they had always desired, while I remained simply Jack. Always handy, always silent. I helped select the dress boutique. I arranged the first catering agreement. I discovered Airbnb for out-of-town guests. When Zach's parents complained that the Colorado Lodge was too rustic, I discovered a luxury equivalent with lake views. I also designed the Save the Date website. They used my Canva account. I still had the login. But now I was a burden since Mia's father disliked the energy I provided. I wore black to breakfast. Because I asked where the $3,000 catering money went and didn't give up when Mom answered, "Just trust us." They always needed me, until they didn't. They were now arranging their picture-perfect family tableau without me. Curated smiles. Filtered bliss. No, Jack. Just the people who matter. I took a big breath and opened our shared folder. Mia and Zach wedding planning. I browsed through the images, contracts, and vendor schedules. Then I deleted every file I had posted. All 63 of them. The folder was renamed, "Good Luck Without Me." I did not tell anyone. I did not warn them. Allow them to find out in the morning when they try to confirm the florist. Allow them to scramble while the photographer isn't present. Let them wonder what happened when the venue sent them an email saying, "Unfortunately, this reservation has been canceled by the account holder." They assumed I'd remain silent. Smile. Swallow it like you always do. But this was not about the wedding. This was the last fracture in something that had been sitting for years. They handed me the scissors, expecting me not to cut the rope. They wanted me gone. Wish granted. They didn't realize I'd take everything with me when I went. And I was only getting started. If you ask them, I was always the dramatic type. The person who overreacted. Who overthinks things. But let me explain how I became that guy. Let's go back to 6 months ago. It was Friday night. Mia called me in tears. Zach had been laid off. The apartment they rented downtown was 3 months late. They attempted to negotiate with the landlord, but he demanded the money. All of it. Or he would file eviction proceedings on Monday. I did not even hesitate. I transferred $3,800 from my savings account and instructed her to call me if she needed anything extra. That was the third time that year I'd helped them out. The first occurred when Dad unintentionally overdrew from his retirement account and required $5,000 to avoid fines. The second occurred when Mom forgot that Mia's bachelorette Airbnb was on my credit card and allowed the girls to wreck the place. I maintained spreadsheets. I saved screenshots. Not because I intended to use them, but because I needed to convince myself that I wasn't crazy. That I hadn't anticipated the steady bleed of money, time, and energy into a family who treated me as if I were a silent giver. But it wasn't just about money. It was how I was regarded after I assisted. As a servant, a backstage hand. While I was fixing his gutters in the middle of a thunderstorm, Dad joked that I should work as a house husband, because I definitely wasn't man enough to be the breadwinner. Everyone laughed, even Mia. When I brought it up later, my mother said I was being overly sensitive. He said he was just old school. Old school? In high school, that man locked me out of the house because I had come home wearing eyeliner. But okay. Maybe I was overly sensitive. Mia told me about her engagement over FaceTime, while Mom and Dad were seated behind her on the couch cheering. They had helped her prepare the proposal with Zach. We even went ring shopping with him. Me? I discovered out via a screen. I should have spotted the pattern, but a part of me remained hopeful that if I helped enough, they'd finally treat me like I mattered. I paid $600 for the engagement shoot, developed the wedding website. I made unique invitations. I paid a deposit for the venue because Mom's card was acting weird. I was building their fantasy brick by brick, while they gave me leftovers and called me a good sport. And then the texting began. Aunt Megan initially said, "Hey, I heard you're not invited to the ceremony. Is that true?" Uncle Jeff then said, "Did you say anything to Zach's dad?" Just curious. Finally, the Facebook post that broke my heart. A photo of Mia and Zach with my parents standing in front of a rustic barn filled with fairy lights. The caption read, "So proud of our family. Can't wait for the big day with all the right people by our side." I was not even tagged. I browsed through the comments. One of Mia's friends inquired, "Is Jack going to be there?" He was always so funny. Mia responded, "We're keeping things small. Just people we trust." That night, I did not sleep. I read through every receipt, every communication, and every time they labeled me selfish for requesting a refund. And I understood something. I was the only person in this family who gave without expecting anything in return, and I was the only one who did not receive anything in return. A few days afterwards, I received a group text. "Hi family. Can everyone pitch in for Mia's bridal shower decorations? Jack, since you're so good with websites, can you make a landing page for RSVPs? Hugs and kisses." I didn't respond. 10 minutes later, Mia messaged me directly, asking, "Can you just do this one thing without being passive-aggressive?" So I did something different. I got into the wedding venue's account and sought a refund for the $2,500 deposit. It was legally non-refundable, but I had purchased wedding insurance during the booking process just in case. No one spotted the small checkbox. They repaid me 90% after I made a family conflict claim. Then I went into Canva and erased all of my designs, including RSVPs, table assignments, and welcome signs. I made a new file called Ask Zach's Dad to Fix This, which I shared with the entire family. That's when everything started to go wrong. 3 hours later, Mom called distraught. "What are you doing? Do you know how this looks?" I responded, "I do. That's why I'm doing it." Then Dad called. He skipped right to ranting. "You've always been jealous of Mia. That's what this is. You couldn't stand her having a better life than you." I hung up while holding the phone away from my ear. That night, my phone exploded. Mia wrote in her Instagram story, "Betrayal always comes from those closest to you." Mom then shared a photo of Mia crying with the remark, "Nothing hurts more than your own brother trying to ruin your special day." People began messaging me, friends and cousins. Some texted, "Are you okay?" Most people did not ask. They just responded, "Why would you ruin her wedding?" I did not respond to any of them. Then I received the package, a yellow envelope with no return address. Inside is a printed screenshot, an inside messaging thread from Mia's bridesmaid group chat. She couldn't stop laughing. "We'll get Jack to pay for the cake too. Just guilt him about being the only brother. Works every time." A different message followed. "Zach doesn't even like him. He said Jack gives him the creeps. LOL. One more thing. He won't be at the wedding. I'll make sure of it. Watch." There was a sticky note on top with the handwriting I recognized. "You deserve better. K." I wasn't sure who K was, but I'd find out. And when I did, everything changed. K had more than screenshots. K had audio. And the moment I heard it, I knew precisely what I was going to do for Mia's rehearsal dinner. The rehearsal dinner was held at a posh winery 30 minutes outside of town. They termed it rustic luxury. I dubbed it a marketing ploy with pricey wine and fairy lights affixed to the trees. But I did show up. Dressed neatly, calm, focused, because I did not come to eat. I came to bury the circus. I walked in just as they were toasting. Mia was in the middle of laughing. Zach had his arm around her. Dad appeared uncomfortable. Mom avoided my gaze. They clearly did not expect me to show up. I intended to play the villain in their script. The spiteful sibling who damaged everything and refused to let go. But I was not bitter. I was finished. I stepped directly to the front of the room. "Sorry to interrupt," I murmured, tapping a glass. Conversations froze. Someone laughed awkwardly. Mia frowned. I removed a little speaker from my jacket and set it on the table. I then held up a flash disk. Zach stood up. "What are you doing?" I looked at him. "Giving you exactly what you deserve." I hit play. "The speaker is on. Turn the volume up." A girl's voice. Mia was chuckling. "We'll get Jack to pay for the cake too. Just guilt him about being the only brother. Works every time." The quiet broke. Mouths opened. Someone gave a gasp. The fork clattered. I did not flinch. Another voice. A different note. "Zach doesn't even like him. He said Jack gives him the creeps. Lol." Zach became white. Mia lunged at the speaker. I stepped in front of it. "Sit down." It was not a request. Then came the last clip. Mia says quietly and smugly, "He won't be at the wedding. I'll make sure of it. Watch." I pressed pause and looked around the room. "Any questions?" Zach opened his mouth and then closed it again. My father stood up, infuriated. "You think this is appropriate? You think this—" "Sit down," I snapped. For the first time in my life he did. I turned to Mia. "I spent over $11,000 on this wedding. I designed your website, negotiated your venue, and paid your florist. I did it because I thought, stupidly, that this was family." Mia was shaking. Her mascara streaked down one cheek. "You don't understand it." "No," I replied. "You don't. You never did. You didn't want a brother. You wanted a wallet." Then I pulled out the folder, which contained hard copies, screenshots, and all of her, mom and dad's texts. The PayPal receipts, the invoices I paid, and the ones I preserved when others forgot. The group conversation where Mia introduced me as the family's free wedding planner. I gave them to Zach. "You still want to marry her?" I inquired. He stared at the pages. No response. A woman in a gray coat stood up from the back. She carried a badge around her neck and a phone in her palm. "Hello everyone. Sorry for intruding," she remarked. "I'm Kristen. Jack and I used to work together. I also run a digital forensic agency. Jack asked me to verify some files." She gazed at Mia. "And to confirm they weren't deep fakes." She held up her phone. "This audio? It's 100% authentic. No edits, no splices. Pulled from a WhatsApp backup linked to your old number. Don't worry, I have the metadata too." Mia's mouth dropped open. Mom gave a gasp. "Is this a joke?" Dad demanded. Kristen smiled. "Not even a little." Then came the twist. Zach turned to face Mia. "You told me Jack said those things to you. That he threatened you. That he was unstable." He brought up the printouts. "You lied." She reaches for his arm. "No, Zach, don't touch me." Then the room exploded. My aunt stood up and began ranting. Someone knocked over the glass. My mother attempted to say something but choked. And through it all, I stood there, silent and serene, watching it burn. When the commotion reached its peak, I lifted my voice one final time. "I'm not coming to the wedding. You already made that decision. But now, you can do it without my money, my help, or my silence." I turned to my parents. "You cut me out the moment you realized I wouldn't play the puppet anymore, so I'm cutting the strings too." Then, as I turned to go, Zach spoke. "I'm calling it off," he said, loud, clear. Mia screamed, a harsh, sharp sound that pierced the air like glass. "You can't do this here." "Oh," I replied, "he just did." Then I walked out. No dramatic music, there's no slow motion, just the sound of everything they'd built falling behind me. I did not drive home following the rehearsal dinner. I didn't even get onto the freeway. Instead, I drove a side road north that was quiet and had no reception. A month before, I had signed a lease on a small home in a neglected region of the state. The population is 600. A single diner. One gas station. Nobody cared who I was. That is precisely why I chose it. I paid for 6 months in advance. No forwarding address. There are no digital breadcrumbs. Just silent. For the first 3 days I did not switch on my phone. I didn't check my emails. I did not speak to anyone. I sat on the porch with a thermos of black coffee, listening to birds squabble for territory they'd never claim. I did not feel triumphant. I felt free. My neck no longer feels tense. No more guilt. No one approached me for money. Nobody pretended to love me just long enough to get a transfer. On day 4, I went into town and enrolled in an archival preservation course at the local college, which I had previously been too humiliated to pursue. History. Dusty newspapers. Letters were forgotten. Finally, I was surrounded by records that were preserved accurately. There was no performance here. There was no manipulation. No. You owe us. I volunteered at the county museum. Helped to catalog images from the 1950s. Repaired an antique microfilm machine. And for once, I didn't care if no one noticed. It was mine. Quietly mine. About a week later, the messages began to arrive in my old Gmail inbox, which was tied to my emergency phone. I didn't read the first couple, but the subject line was clear enough. Can we just talk? You went too far. We're still family. Next followed the blocked calls, dozens. I left the phone turned off. They were not attempting to make peace. They tried to reset the game. What terrified them was not the evidence. It was the silence. They couldn't take not knowing what I'd do next, because for the first time, they weren't in control. 3 weeks later, a court notification was delivered to my old flat. Apparently my father had attempted to sell a section of the family land. What he didn't comprehend was that I had locked the deed 2 years ago when he unintentionally tried to remortgage it without my permission. I had left it in legal limbo, waiting. He activated the provision himself. As a result, his business transaction fell through. His buyer walked away, prompting a fraud inquiry. Not because I caused it, but because I did not stop it. I did not publish a blog. I did not post a spectacular expose. I didn't send screenshots to the group chat. I just disappeared. There were no birthday calls. There is no financial rescue. No maybe next time. That is what truly ruined them. Because narcissists do not fear the repercussions. They are afraid of being irrelevant. They are afraid of being on stage without an audience. One morning I walked to the post office. Not for mail, but for a tiny item that I had ordered. Someone behind me in line was talking on the phone. Put it this way. I heard Mia's fiancé walked out before the wedding even happened. Then apparently her brother disappeared. Took all his money with him. I did not turn around. I never gave a statement. Never clarified anything. I simply became inaccessible. No address, no number, no access. They believed that quiet indicated weakness. They had no idea it was an option. A silent surgical type of goodbye. Not in words, but in their absence. The kind of absence that cannot be altered. The kind that makes people sit with the consequences of what they did. They can't make me feel guilty anymore. They are unable to contact when the rent is late, or the credit card is maxed. They can't pretend everything is fine when they need another favor. Because there is no longer a we. There is only them, and a mailbox that reads, "No messages received." Do you know what's funny? When you ultimately walk away from the people who have constructed their life on top of you, they do not tumble instantly. They merely stood there shocked, as if someone had turned off the sound and they couldn't find the volume button. That is what happened. Even after everything had burned down, after the rehearsal, after the calls, after the silence, they remained hopeful that I would return. Because I always have. But this time I didn't. I changed my phone number. Not just a SIM card replacement, new carrier, new country code. No forwarding. There's no auto reply. Just nothing. I closed the joint account that Dad had set up with me for emergencies. I moved my bank statements to a private digital vault. I updated my medical power of attorney. I removed all family names. I even updated the emergency contact information on my driver's license from mom to nobody. They do not know where I live. They do not know where I work. They're not sure if I'm in the state, the country, or even above ground. And this kills them. I returned a month ago, but only once. Not to the house. Not to the vineyard. I drove by the wedding venue, which I had canceled. It was vacant. Abandoned. A for sale sign hung crookedly on the front gate. A faded bouquet lay crushed on the stones. It felt right. I rolled down the windows. The breeze smelt of rain and melancholy. Before leaving, I did one thing. I strolled to the mailbox at the main entrance and dropped off a little envelope. There's no return address. Inside is a printout of the last wedding invoice I paid, with a post-it note on top. It said, "Thanks for nothing." I have stopped checking the old email. But every now and then, I log in to observe the flood. One unopened message was labeled, "Please just talk to us." I did not open it. Another one. "We don't know who you are anymore." That one made me smile. Because finally they're correct. I am not the person that paid their debts at 3 a.m. I am not the emergency contact. I am not the wedding planner, free therapist, unseen sibling, or guilt-ridden son. I'm just a guy living a different life now. One that they cannot reach, corrupt, or rewrite. I received a new mailbox last week. Metal, clean, lockable. One of those security drop boxes that won't let anything out once it's inside. The technician asked what name I wanted inscribed on the plate. I replied, "No name, just a message." So now on a small metal rectangle immediately beneath the keyhole it says, "This box does not accept apologies." And what about the stillness I'm hearing every day now? Peace. Thanks for watching and being part of the drama. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss a wild news story. My parents begged me to help with the mortgage, not knowing I'd already paid $267,000. So I gave them 30 days to get out of my house. When my uncle emailed me that video, I felt my entire world turn on its axis. My parents and my brother Theodore sat around our old kitchen table in Phoenix, talking about me as if I were a burden. The bright Arizona sun shone through the windows, providing a warm warmth that seemed to mock the chilly words said. "And Lindsay only helps because she owes us," my mother remarked, her voice full of hate. "And after everything we've done for her, paying the mortgage is the least she can do." My brother Theodore added up with a chuckle, "Yeah, and she acts like she's doing us some huge favor. What a joke." The worst part was my father's silent nod of agreement. The man who had once taught me to ride a bike and assisted me with my arithmetic homework now sat there, enabling them to tear me apart. The video was grainy, certainly recorded without their knowledge, but their sentences were crystal clear. I saw it 3 times, each time leaving me with an odd combination of numbness and clarity. For the past 4 years, I'd been paying hefty mortgage payments through my LLC, Divine Investments. They assumed they were paying payments to a bank and never read the fine print of the deal my financial consultant had helped establish. Every month they made a modest amount while I covered the majority of the payment, all the while complaining about my minimal assistance. My Uncle Jason's message arrived right after. "You need to see this, Lindsay." I couldn't stay quiet anymore. They've been talking like this for months. I sat in my home office glancing at the spreadsheets that listed every payment I'd made. The stats didn't lie. More than $200,000 was invested in keeping them comfy in that residence. My hands should have been quivering with rage, but they remained still when I pulled up the mortgage agreement. I smiled slightly as I remembered the purchase option language that my financial consultant had insisted on inclusion. "Oh, just in case," she had responded. Looking back, I wonder if she was aware that something like this could happen. My next payment was due in 2 weeks, and for the first time, I understood exactly what I had to do. I grabbed up my phone and typed a brief message to my uncle. "Thank you for showing me the truth. Don't worry, I won't let them know you sent this, but things are about to change." I had always been the family's safety net, despite their refusal to admit it. 4 years ago, when the Phoenix housing market collapsed, and they were about to lose their home, I stepped in. I was 27 years old at the time, and I had already established myself as a successful software development manager. The irony was that they were never supportive of my professional choice. They wanted me to take over my father's struggling real estate firm. "Software is not a career for a woman," my mother would say, her lips pursed in disgust. "Your brother Theodore is the one with the real business sense." But Theodore, despite his economic acumen, nearly bankrupted the family business within 2 years of taking over. When they needed assistance with their mortgage, I contacted my financial advisor, Kate. She proposed a novel solution: form an LLC, buy the house through it, and make them believe they were still working with a bank. That way, I could defend myself legally while also aiding them. It seems perfect at the moment. I could aid without having to deal with their pride. The arrangement went smoothly. Divine Investments LLC became the mortgage holder, and I boosted their monthly payments without their knowledge. They preserved their dignity, while I kept my family steady. My Uncle Jason was the only one who knew the truth, having overheard Kate and me talking about it at a family gathering. "You're too good to them, Lindsay," he said then. "But they don't deserve your kindness." Naturally, I stood up for them. They're my family. They might not understand my choices, but they've always given me a home. Now, after watching that film for the 4th time, I realized how mistaken I had been. Their words echoed in my head. She owes us. What a joke. The least she can do. Each sentence felt like a dagger being inserted deeper. I opened my laptop and accessed the LLC's account. The next mortgage payment was due on the 15th, only 2 weeks away. They had never been late before, and they transferred their half like clockwork. But now that I knew how they truly felt, I had no intention of covering the remainder this time. Allow them to suffer the consequences of their ingratitude. Allow them to deal with the bank on their own. They had no notion that their daughter, the dutiful, worthless burden, was also their landlord. The concept made me smile. Sometimes karma requires a little shove. The video was not the end of things. The next day, my Uncle Jason emailed me additional evidence. Images of family group chat discussions from which I had been purposely omitted. They constructed it 6 months ago and dubbed it family finances. Every communication felt like a worse betrayal than the last. "And Lindsay thinks she's so special with her technical job," Theodore wrote. "She barely helps with the mortgage while I'm here every day running Dad's business." My mother's remark made my blood run cold. "We should ask her for more money. She's single, has no children. What else does she spend it on? After all we've sacrificed to raise her, she can't even support her family." I retrieved my financial records, shaking slightly as I computed the total. Over the last 4 years I have contributed $267,843 to their mortgage through Divine Investments, while they have only paid $52,500. The monthly payments to the bank comprised the majority of the mortgage. They had no idea I was covering an extra $5,400 every month. My phone vibrated with a message from my mother. "Sweetie, could you come to dinner this Sunday? We need to discuss something important." I knew exactly what the something was. They intended to ask for additional money, most likely accompanied by emotional manipulation and guilt-tripping. The thought of sitting there pretending I had no idea what they truly thought of me made my stomach turn. I phoned Kate, my financial advisor. "I need to know my options with the purchase agreement." "Sent," I replied. "I had a feeling you might," she said without surprise. "Remember the provision we included. If they miss a payment, Divine Investments can use the purchasing option right away. The house would be yours outright, and they would be month-to-month renters." A plan began to form in my head. What if they were late with the rent? The standard Arizona eviction laws would apply. You would be within your rights to give them notice. She paused. "Lindsay, are you certain you want to go there?" I considered years of condescension, of being the family ATM while they teased me behind my back. I thought about Theodore destroying our father's business while they praised his business sense. I thought about every snarky remark about my career, my life choices, and my alleged responsibilities to them. "Yes," I responded, my voice steady. "I am sure. But I'm not going to tell them anything, yet. Allow them to believe that everything is normal for the time being." I texted my mother back. "Of sure I will come to dinner. Looking forward to it." The heart emoji seemed ironic but necessary. After all, they'd taught me well. Sometimes the best retribution necessitates a flawless poker face. The next mortgage payment was due in 13 days, and for the first time since the arrangement began, I would not be present to catch them as they fell. Sunday dinner felt like an exercise in self-control. I arrived at their Phoenix house at exactly 6 p.m., with the sinking sun painting the desert landscape in orange and purple. The house, my house technically, looked just like it had for the previous 20 years. The familiar aroma of my mother's lasagna floated through the air, a deliberate choice designed to remind me of happier days. "Linz, sweetie." My mother ran to embrace me, her designer bracelet catching the sun. I noted it was new. Probably purchased with money they should have used to pay their mortgage. which was due in 9 days. Theodore sat at the dining table, looking more like a smuggler than normal in his pressed business casual outfit. "Face it, sis. Good for you for making time for your family." I grinned as I remembered his remark about barely helping. If only he knew how much his entire lifestyle depended on my generosity. "I always have time for my family," I said, the irony thick in my mouth. My father emerged from his study with his reading glasses perched on his nose. He was going over some documents that I noticed were bank statements. The image almost made me giggle. They were carefully planning their pitch. "But before we eat," my mother said, setting down the lasagna, "we wanted to talk about something important." She looked at my father, who nodded encouragingly. "Of course," I replied, serving myself a portion. "What's on your mind?" Theodore cleared his throat. "Well, as you know, Dad's business has been experiencing some difficulties. The real estate market is not what it used to be." I took a slice of lasagna and chewed slowly. Despite the fact that the Phoenix market is stronger than ever, the company has faced hurdles since Theodore took control. "And we've been thinking," my mother said, reaching for my hand across the table, "about how fortunate we are to have such a successful daughter. Your father and I made significant sacrifices to ensure that you received a solid education." I saw her performance with fresh eyes, the gentle touch, the reminder of their efforts. Everything was perfectly choreographed. "But the mortgage payment has become quite a burden," my father said, his voice carrying that distinct tone of paternal authority that he had always used to make me feel small. "And with you doing so well in your computer work." "Software development," I corrected immediately, even though they had never tried to learn the difference. "Right," he said dismissively. "Well, we hoped you would be able to help with the monthly installments. After all, this is also your family's home. If only they realized how much of it was already mine." "We're only asking for an extra $2,000 per month," my mother explained hastily. "It's not much, considering your salary." I took another slice of lasagna, using the opportunity to keep my cool. They wanted $2,000 extra when they had no idea I had already paid more than $5,000? The audacity was nearly astounding. "I'll think about it," I finally responded, keeping my voice neutral. "Times are a bit uncertain right now." "Uncertain?" Theodore scoffed. "Please, we all know you're doing well. Unlike those of us who are working hard to preserve this family's history." I smiled, thinking of the notification their bank would send if they missed their payment next week. "You're correct, Theodore. Sometimes we all receive what we deserve." After dinner, I excused myself to go to the restroom, but made a purposeful detour by my father's study. The door was ajar, and I could hear my parents and Theodore conversing quietly. I paused, my heart beating, as their words faded away. "She's not going to help," Theodore remarked, his tone harsh. "Did you see how she just sat there acting all superior with her tech money while our business was struggling?" "Patience," my father responded. "See, I have another option. Remember those investment documents I found in her cloud storage when she used our Wi-Fi last month? She's been hiding money from us in some company called Divine Investments." My blood became chilly. They had snooped through my files on my last visit. I had unintentionally utilized their Wi-Fi without a VPN, and my cloud storage had synced automatically. "I looked it up," my father added. "It's a legitimate LLC and it's doing very well. She's been squirreling away money there instead of helping her family." "And we raised a snake," my mother's voice added. "We'll give her one more chance to help voluntarily. If not, I'll remind her about that time in college when she took money from your business account for her tuition. She thought we never knew, but we have proof. She'll have to help us then." I had to bite my lip to avoid laughing. The money they were referring to was borrowed with my father's approval when their tuition check bounced. I even paid it off within a month, with interest. I had emails that proved everything. Their attempt at blackmail was both sad and desperate. "And if that doesn't work," says Theodore, "we can always reach out to her company's HR department. Ask some questions about her mental stability. Maybe she's been stealing company resources for personal projects. That would get their attention." The nonchalant way they contemplated damaging my career chilled my veins. These people were not family. They were parasites, with family masks. I silently returned to the restroom, flushed the toilet for show, and returned to the dining room. They returned shortly later, each wearing a prepared smile. "Lindsay dear," my mother lovingly asked me, "have you given any thought to what we discussed about helping more with the mortgage?" I met her eyes steadily. "Actually I have. You're right. Family should help family. I'll have an answer for you in about 8 days." The timing was not random. Their mortgage payment was due in 8 days, and I knew what would happen if they missed it. Divine Investments would eventually reveal its genuine ownership. 8 days? Theodore frowned. Why such a specific timeline? I stood up and gathered my handbag. "I just need to check some things with my financial advisor. You understand, right? Being careful with money is just good business sense." I grinned at Theodore, echoing their favorite phrase. My mother led me to the door and pulled me into another deliberate hug. "We knew you'd understand, sweetheart. Family always comes first." "Yes," I said, recalling the eviction notice I had previously composed. "Family always gets exactly what they deserve." While driving home, I contacted my Uncle Jason. "You were right about them," I remarked when he responded. "But don't worry, I'm done playing the silent partner in their little drama. It's time for the final act." The week passed with painful slowness. My family continued their pressure campaign, sending regular texts about their dire financial circumstances. Each message increased my determination. I submitted everything to Kate, my financial consultant, who was helping me prepare for the impending showdown. "When the paperwork is ready," Kate stated during our meeting 3 days before the payment was due, "if they miss the payment, Divine Investments can exercise its purchase option immediately. I've also prepared the eviction notices, just in case." I nodded while reviewing the paperwork. "And you're sure everything's legally sound? They can't fight this?" "Your father signed the agreement 4 years ago," she told me. "He barely read it. He was too desperate for the bailout. Everything's perfectly legal." That evening, my brother launched his own attack. "Hey sis," his text said. "I was just talking to my friend in tech recruitment. Heard some companies are doing layoffs. Must be scary for you. Good thing you have family to fall back on." He proceeded. "Speaking of which, about that help we discussed." The attempted manipulation was so obvious it was almost hilarious. I read the message to my Uncle Jason over coffee the next day. "They never change," he remarked, shaking his head. "Your aunt and I watched them do this to everyone in the family. It's why we distanced ourselves years ago." "Did you know they went through my files when I visited?" I requested an explanation. "Not surprised," he responded. "They did the same to your cousin when she stayed there last year. They're always looking for leverage." He paused. "Are you ready for the fallout? They won't take this well." I considered their threats to contact my company's HR, their efforts to blackmail me, and their years of accepting my assistance while insulting me behind my back. "I'm ready. They made their choice. Now they'll face the consequences." My mother called 2 days before the money was due. "Sweetie, we need your answer about the mortgage help. Times are tough and family needs to stick together." "Don't worry, Mom," I responded, my voice firm. "Everything will be clear very soon." That night I got an email from the family's bank. They attempted to send funds from their account to Divine Investments, but the payment bounced. They were already overdrawn. I forwarded the notice to Kate. "Here we go," she responded. "Want me to start the proceedings tomorrow?" I reflected on the lasagna meal, their smug expressions, and their casual discussion about damaging my career. I reflected on the years of manipulation, the continual demands, and the ceaseless ingratitude. "No," I typed back. "Let's wait until the payment officially fails. Let them spend the next 2 days thinking everything's fine. They taught me well. Timing is everything." I opened my laptop and started writing an email to my company's HR department, detailing my family's threats and adding the information Uncle Jason had compiled. It's better to get ahead of their possible attacks. The end was near, and I was leaving nothing to chance. "Sometimes," I mumbled to myself, "the best revenge is simply allowing individuals to suffer the consequences of their own behavior." The payment deadline has come and gone. Divine Investments' automated system dispatched its default message at precisely 9 a.m. I checked my phone, counting down the seconds till the inevitable call. It took exactly 12 minutes. "Lindsay," my mother said frantically. "Something's wrong with our mortgage payment. The bank is saying we defaulted, but that's impossible. We need your help immediately." Actually, I said with a smile, Divine Investments isn't a bank. It's an LLC. My LLC, to be specific. The stillness at the other end was deafening. What? She eventually asked in a whisper. Check your email, I advised. You'll find a notice explaining that due to your default, Divine Investments is exercising its purchase option. The house is now legally mine. Your status has been changed to month-to-month tenants. This is a joke, she muttered. No joke. I've been covering the majority of your mortgage for 4 years while you all mocked me behind my back, called me a burden, plotted to blackmail me, and threatened my career. So how did you? Uncle Jason showed me the video. He showed me everything. Now about your tenancy, your first rent payment is due in 30 days. I suggest you start looking for somewhere else to live. My father's voice suddenly broke through. They'd put me on speaker. She's ungrateful. Thanks for watching and diving into this wild family drama with me. If you love Reddit family drama, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss the next one. Overshadowed by my parents' favoritism toward my twin, I reached out to my uncle, who encouraged me by gifting me a car. I, 23F, need to get this off my chest. I've been holding this in for so long, trying to tell myself that things will eventually change, but recent events have shown me that I can't keep pretending any longer. This is about my twin sister, Emma, 23F, and how our parents, Linda, 48F, and Robert, 50M, treated us differently throughout our lives, including our professional jobs at one of New York's major corporations. Growing up in our suburban home wasn't too bad, assuming you didn't mind being continually overshadowed. Mom is a real estate salesperson who lives for open houses and client lunches, someone who views every social contact as a potential sale. Dad owns his own accounting firm, and they're all about upholding the perfect image: a spotless home, manicured lawn, country club membership, and private school tuition. However, that meticulously produced image functioned best when Emma was the focal point. I first noticed the trend around the age of 6. It wasn't evident at first, more like puzzle pieces that only made sense years later. When we went shopping for school supplies, Emma got the trendy backpacks and elegant pencil cases, while I got the practical, robust ones because they'll last longer. Emma's birthday parties were elaborately themed affairs with professional entertainment and personalized cakes. My family gatherings were simple since you prefer quiet celebrations, don't you, sweetie? The holidays were when the disparity became painfully obvious. Every Christmas morning, Emma would open the latest must-have toys. The costly dolls, the newest gaming systems, and everything she'd circled in the holiday catalogs. I'd get educational toys or practical gifts, like clothes, because you're the responsible one. I have a vivid memory of one Christmas. Emma purchased a large dollhouse that cost more than most individuals spend on their entire holiday shopping. I was given a collection of science encyclopedias because they'll help with your studies. When I expressed interest in the dollhouse, Mom swiftly remarked, "Let Emma enjoy her special gift. You have books to read." Elementary school presented its own issues. Emma struggled with reading from an early age, so our parents hired several tutors and spent hours helping her practice. When I needed help with math, Mom would tell me to try harder. Emma joined every after-school activity she desired, including dance, gymnastics, and cheerleading. When I begged to join the science club, Dad answered, "Maybe next semester when we have more budget." But that semester never came. By middle school, I had learned to value my intellectual abilities. I pushed myself into my studies, obtaining consecutive A's and plaudits from teachers. However, this created another cause of tension. Emma had a meltdown after I won the school science fair in 7th grade because she wasn't getting any attention. At the family supper that night, instead of celebrating my accomplishment, Mom spent the evening soothing Emma, telling her, "Everyone has different talents." Dad just sat there, occasionally staring at me with discomfort rather than pride. The tendency became more pronounced during high school. I completed all advanced placement classes, joined academic clubs, and tutored other kids. Emma, on the other hand, prioritized popularity and social activities, achieving just passing marks while excelling at making social connections. During the college application season, I spent numerous hours improving my essays and applying to scholarships. Emma applied to 3 institutions, each with relatively simple admission standards. However, Emma's admittance into our state university's business school piqued our parents' interest more than my acceptance to many top-tier universities with hefty scholarships. When we both got employment at Stellaris Corporation after graduation, I figured things would finally change. I was accepted into their extremely competitive management training program after completing 6 rounds of interviews and tests. Emma was hired in sales after meeting the department head at one of Mom's real estate networking events. You'd think that working in the corporate world would level the playing field, yet our family dynamics followed us like a shadow. In my 9 months at Stellaris, I have routinely exceeded my analytics targets. I created a new reporting system that saved the organization more than $200,000 in the first quarter alone. My team leader has already suggested me for an early promotion. Emma, on the other hand, is well known for planning office social events and nurturing client ties. She hasn't fulfilled her sales targets yet, but she reminds our parents that building relationships takes time. Mom and Dad's reactions to our various job paths have been predictably biased. When Emma organizes a successful client lunch, Mom posts about it on all social media platforms with headlines such, "So proud of my baby girl making waves in the corporate world." When I earned an excellence award for my cost-saving ideas, Mom texted me a quick, "That's nice, honey," followed by 5 texts about assisting Emma with an impending client presentation. The office dynamic itself frequently feels like a rerun of our childhood. Emma's workstation is on the 15th floor, in the sales department, where she deals with a steady stream of visitors. My workstation is on the 12th level of analytics, where I spend the majority of my time working with data and creating reports. Emma is frequently the center of attention at business events, while I stay in the background, focusing on keeping our projects on track. Last month, I believe things might finally change. Our department bosses announced that they were choosing team members for a distinguished 2-week training session in our Singapore office. Both Emma and I were nominated as candidates. For 3 weeks straight, I worked late at the office, methodically preparing my presentation and project proposals. I examined previous successful applicants, studied the Singapore office's activities, and produced detailed proposals for possible cross-market projects. Emma, in her own style, concentrated on networking. She spent the same 3 weeks treating key decision-makers to lunch and organizing after-work social activities. I overheard her say to someone, "Why worry about presentations when you can build connections?" It was such a typical Emma attitude that I almost had to chuckle. Last Tuesday, we gave our last presentations for the Singapore program. The selection committee included senior executives from both administrations. I presented a full analysis and cross-market approach, including expected outcomes and execution deadlines. Emma pursued me, presenting what she called a people-first approach to international collaboration, which centered on team building and social activities. I felt confident in my chances. My presentation was robust, supported by statistics and concrete strategies. But deep down, I had a nagging suspicion that something would go wrong, as it often does when Emma and I compete for the same thing. The findings were released Tuesday morning. Our department head summoned us both to the conference room. Emma was selected for the Singapore program. What's the reason? Her natural ability to build relationships would be beneficial to international cooperation. I sat there, attempting to keep a professional demeanor as my gut twisted into knots. The saddest thing wasn't missing the opportunity, it was seeing Emma's perfected expression of phony modesty when she accepted the post. But that wasn't the actual blow to the gut. During my lunch break, I overheard Emma on the phone with Mom. "Yes, it is for 2 weeks. No, I will not be alone." "Really? Would you and Dad do that?" "That'd be wonderful." My heart plummeted before I really realized what was coming. Later that evening, during our monthly family meal, which Mom insists on keeping even though we're grown-ups, they dropped the bomb. Emma was not only going to Singapore, but her parents had decided to make it a family vacation. They'd purchased tickets to follow her, intending to support her throughout this significant career milestone before spending an additional week traveling Southeast Asia together. I sat there, pushing my food around on my plate, waiting for them to reveal my participation in these schemes. Instead, Mom turned to me and said, "Won't you take care of the house while we're away, honey? Make sure you water my plants. The expensive ones in the sunroom require special attention." Emma couldn't help but add her own spin. "Don't worry, sister, I'll send you plenty of photos. You can live vicariously via me." She chuckled as if it were a joke we were both in on. Dad merely kept eating and avoided eye contact, as he normally does in these situations. I excused myself from dinner early, claiming I had work to complete. As I drove home to my apartment, memories came flooding back. All the times I'd been excluded, disregarded, or dismissed. Emma had dance recitals, therefore they were unable to attend the science fair victories. Emma needed assistance with her college applications, so they scarcely ignored the scholarship announcements. The constant barrage of not nows, and maybe laters that defined my childhood. Emma was already telling everyone at work this morning about her great news. "It's going to be such an amazing family experience," she kept saying, apparently unaware of or purposefully ignoring the fact that not all of her family was present. I buried myself into my work, ignoring the congratulatory messages in Emma's inbox and the constant stream of coworkers who stopped by her desk. Our team leader sensed something was wrong and inquired whether I was all right. I flashed her my best professional smile and claimed I was all right, just thinking about our forthcoming project deadlines. During the afternoon meeting, Emma couldn't stop talking about her trip to Singapore. "I'm so grateful for this opportunity," she added, gazing right at me. "It's important to have family support during big career moments." The irony in her comment made me want to scream. Now I'm sitting here, watching my sister and dad plan their thrilling Asian excursion, while I'm supposed to stay behind and water the plants. The familiar sensation of being a family afterthought is devastating. But what hurts the most is understanding that nothing has changed. I'm still the little girl who got encyclopedias for Christmas while her sister got a playhouse. I have not informed anyone at work how I truly feel. What do I even say? My twin sister gets everything handed to her, while I work twice as hard for half the recognition. It sounds petty, but it's the fact I've known my entire life. Mom sent a group text tonight about a meeting this weekend to help Emma purchase acceptable work clothes in Singapore. I have not responded. I'm sick of playing my allocated role in the family performance, the dependable but forgettable supporting character in the Emma show. I don't know what to do now. Part of me wants to finally speak up and demand an explanation for years of being treated as an afterthought. But part of me knows it won't make a difference. They'll just call me theatrical or envious, like they always do when I try to confront inequality. So here I am, reaching out to strangers on the internet because I don't know anyone else to talk to. Is it crazy to feel like this? Am I overreacting to what they would presumably describe as just a family vacation? I've spent my entire life trying to prove my worth to people who refuse to recognize it, and I'm beginning to wonder whether I should give up. Update 1. Following my previous post, something unexpected occurred that dramatically altered things. I need to post this since I'm still trying to digest everything. The morning my family went to Singapore feels like it happened in a different lifetime. I felt like a ghost among my own family members as I watched them put their identical fancy baggage into Mom's Mercedes. Mom was worrying about Emma's carry-on luggage, Dad was checking their passports, and Emma was taking selfies for her Instagram story, which she had previously hashtagged with amazing family adventure. Mom turned to me just before they left, using her dismissive tone. "Remember to check the mail every day and water the plants. The orchids in the sunroom require extra maintenance. I have left instructions on the kitchen counter. We will be back in 3 weeks." That was it. No goodbye hugs. There's no "we'll miss you," just a list of duties. After they drove away, I sat in their empty house, surrounded by all of the exquisite furnishings in their immaculate rooms and feeling absolutely lost. Looking at the family portraits on the walls, most of which depict Emma's accomplishments, brought back memories. Years ago, I overheard Mom's furious phone discussion with her brother, Uncle Jack. She was telling him he was an embarrassment and should avoid her perfect family. Jack was never mentioned except as a hazy cautionary tale about poor life choices. But, sitting in that empty house, something clicked. Perhaps someone who has been kicked out of the perfect family can understand how it feels to never quite fit in. I got his address after a fast online search. He lived just a few miles away in a small area across town. His house was small but well kept, with a somewhat overgrown garden that seemed more alive than our pristine lawn ever did. An old motorcycle was sitting in the driveway. When he opened the door, I froze. He didn't resemble Mom's side of the family. He had kind eyes and laugh wrinkles around his mouth, and he was dressed in well-worn trousers and a faded band t-shirt. "Could I help you?" he inquired, seeming perplexed. "I'm Natalie," I managed to say. "Linda's daughter." His eyes widened with recognition before softening with understanding. "Well, I'll be damned," he muttered, shaking his head with a faint smile. "Little Natalie. The last time I saw you, you were barely walking. You resemble your granny." She was also the quiet rebel in the family. His home was messy, yet comfortable, stocked with books and classic vehicle models. Everything came spilling out over coffee and mismatched mugs, years of being second best, endless comparisons to Emma, the Singapore trip, and everything else. He listened without interrupting, occasionally nodding as if not shocked. "Your mother," he finally concluded, "has always cared about appearances. When we were kids, she was the ideal daughter, while I was the family disappointment since I opted to be a mechanic instead of attending college. Sounds familiar?" We spoke for hours. He told me about growing up with Mom, how she was always obsessed with creating the perfect image, and how she shut him out totally when he refused to give up his embarrassing vocation and pursue a career in finance, as she preferred. But you know what? He showed me pictures of his auto shops. Being excluded from her idea of perfection was the nicest thing that ever happened to me. I got to live my life on my own terms, start my business from scratch, and marry someone I love rather than someone who looked nice on paper. Before I left that first day, he inquired about my plans, employment, and dreams. Nobody in my family had ever expressed such real interest in my life. When I told him about my analytics work, he understood and appeared genuinely impressed with my accomplishments. Jack called a few days later and invited me to his house. When I arrived, he was standing in his driveway alongside a brand new BMW 3 Series. My heart almost stopped when he held up the keys and said, "It's yours." I looked at him as if he had lost his wits. "What? No, I cannot. This is too much." The car must have cost more than I earned in a year, but he simply smiled and placed the keys into my hand. "You earned it," he replied simply. "Someone needs to show you that your accomplishments are important. Consider it a graduation present, late, but better than never." I've done well for myself over the years, and I currently operate 3 successful car shops. Let me do this for my niece, who has finally stood up for herself. The automobile was stunning, sleek black with leather seats and all the newest technology. As I sat in the driver's seat, stunned, Jack leaned against the door. "Drive it to work. Leave it where they can see it when they return." Sometimes the greatest way to respond to being excluded is to demonstrate that you no longer need their approval. Each time I drove it to work, I felt a little stronger and more confident. My colleagues sensed a shift in me. "There's something different about you," my team leader said. "You seem more assured." For once, I did not downplay my accomplishments. "It was a gift from my uncle," I explained proudly. "He believes in celebrating achievements." Today, I received another SMS from Emma. "Singapore is incredible. Mom and Dad are bringing me shopping in all of the designer stores. Send pictures so you don't feel left out." A year ago, such photos would have crushed me. Today, I grinned while looking at my new car keys. For once, I didn't feel excluded at all. But of course, this moment of calm could not endure. Mom called earlier. Apparently, one of her real estate clients noticed me visiting Jack. "What were you thinking?" she demanded, her voice tensed with rage. "He's not a member of this family anymore. Do you have any notion how it appears when you visit him? Stay away from him." When I didn't instantly agree, she said, "We'll talk about it properly when we get back tomorrow." They'll return from their trip tomorrow. I've parked the BMW in our driveway, so they can't miss it. I know there will be drama. Mom will be outraged about Jack, and Emma will undoubtedly be upset about not receiving an expensive gift herself. But, for once, I don't care how they react. Jack made me realize something vital. I've worked my entire life to earn a spot in their ideal family photo. Perhaps it's time to start taking my own images. Update 2. Everything burst just as I predicted, but not in the way I had hoped. A lot has transpired since my last update, and I need to explain how everything has altered. When my family returned from Singapore, I was sitting on Jack's porch when my phone began to buzz with texts. Emma had arrived home first and noticed the BMW in the driveway. "What the hell, Natalie? Where did you get the car?" This was followed by a series of progressively irate text messages. I drove home to confront them, feeling surprisingly calm. When I arrived, they were all standing in the driveway, Mom looking as if she had swallowed something unpleasant, Dad avoiding eye contact as usual, and Emma with her arms crossed, still dressed in her Singapore airport attire. "Who bought your car?" Mom demanded before I even stepped out. When I informed her it was from Uncle Jack, her face flushed an unusual shade of red. "Jack? That low-life mechanic who couldn't even complete college? Return it immediately," Mom snapped. "No," I said, surprised by how calm my voice was. "I am not returning anything. Uncle Jack bought me this car because he is pleased with my accomplishments, which you would not comprehend." Emma stepped forward, hand out. "Please, Nat, don't be selfish. I know I'll look better driving it. I work in sales, and appearance is important in my position." I laughed. Actually, I laughed. "Unbelievable. You just returned from a luxury trip that I was not invited to, and now you want my car." Mom's expression tightened. "If you don't hand over those keys right now, you can find somewhere else to live." "Funny you should say that," I said, walking to my car and opening the trunk to display my packed baggage. I was planning on leaving anyway. The expression on their faces was priceless. Mom's mouth expanded and closed, like a fish out of water. Emma simply gazed, her perfect Instagram pose finally shattering. Dad shuffled uneasily but, as always, said nothing. "Don't worry," I murmured, getting back into the car. "I will send you photos. You can live vicariously via me for once. I drove directly to Jack's residence. He had already arranged the guest room, as if he knew exactly how things would play out. Stay for as long as you need, he offered, helping me with my things. It's about time someone in this family stood up to Linda. The following few days were bizarre. I began preparing for my new life by transferring to a different department at work, one that had been attempting to attract me for months, and looking for my own apartment. But Emma couldn't let me enjoy a moment of peace. She began posting on social media about toxic family members and ungrateful sisters. The posts were always carefully phrased to make her appear as the victim while portraying me as the villain. Some people can't handle others' success and lash out instead, she said beside a photo of my vacant childhood room. Sad when jealousy ruins relationships. Our mutual high school acquaintances began to contact us, asking what was wrong with me and why I was causing problems with my family. Emma had always been the social media queen, meticulously constructing her image as the ideal daughter, and she was now utilizing the platform to dictate the narrative. But something unexpected occurred. My coworkers, who had seen me work twice as hard for half the accolades, began protecting me. My team leader celebrated genuine achievements by posting a photo of our department's success metrics, which I had helped enhance. Other coworkers told stories about my efforts to the organization. Then, last Friday, Mom arrived at my new office. She strode in as if she owned the place, swinging her luxury bags. "This has gone on long enough," she declared. "You have to come home and fix this. People are talking." I looked up from my computer, observing how quiet my coworkers had become while watching the scene unfold. "Good," I said calmly. "Let them chat. Maybe they'll finally understand what's been going on all these years." "You've changed," she replied, her tone stern. "And not for the best. This is not you, Natalie. This disobedience, this attention-seeking behavior, it's beneath you." "No, Mom," I responded, rising up. "This is who I am. You just didn't notice because you were too busy making sure Emma was in the spotlight," I explained. She attempted a different strategy, lowering her voice. "How about family loyalty? What would others think if they saw you living with Jack and driving his car? He's no longer really a member of our family." "That's where you're incorrect," I answered. "Jack has been more family to me in the last few weeks than you have in my entire life. He actually sees me, Mom. Mr. Not just Emma's shadow. He's using you to get back at me," she said. "You're just too naive to see it." I shake my head. "No, Mom. For the first time in my life, I can see everything clearly. You can leave now. I have work to do." She stayed there for a bit, evidently looking for anything else to say, and then turned and walked away without saying anything else. Later that day, Jack called to tell me something fascinating. "Your mom showed up at my shop," he added, laughing. "She wanted to talk about my will. I think she's concerned that I'm leaving everything to you. Linda is always thinking about what's in it for her." "What have you told her?" I asked. "I told her not to worry about it," he added. "But honestly, Natalie, her coming here isn't for the money. It's all about control. She's terrified of what I might reveal about the past." When I questioned what he meant, he paused. "Let's not open that can of worms just yet. Focus on your future, youngster. You've got bigger things to worry about." And he's correct. I'm settling into my new life now, and my work is going great. It turns out that when you're not constantly trying to prove your worth to people who never acknowledge it, you have a lot more energy to actually do your job. I'll be looking at apartments next week, and I'm even thinking about going back to school for my MBA. Emma continues to post her passive-aggressive updates, but they no longer hurt. Mom continues to try to get me to see reason, and Dad continues to avoid conflict by saying nothing at all. But for the first time in my life, I feel free. Free from constant comparison, free from the never-ending need to earn their approval, and free from living in Emma's shadow. Sometimes I look at old family photos and feel a twinge of sadness for that little girl who worked so hard to be seen, but then I look at my life now, my career that's finally taking off, my supportive uncle who celebrates my accomplishments, my new friends who value me for who I am. And I realize that little girl finally got what she always wanted. Her approval, rather than her family's, was preferable. I'm not sure what the future contains, but for the first time, I'm looking forward to finding out. After all, some family stories must finish in order for new ones to begin. I ended my engagement to my fiancée. After she wanted a break to explore her ex, I sold our house and disappeared. Hello everyone. After what feels like an eternity, I, 27 million, decided it was time to discuss what has been going on with me recently. Here's the thing. Until lately, I thought I was marrying the love of my life, Tessa, 26F. We'd been together for 4 years, and for the most part, I thought we were solid. But now I'm sitting here, wondering why I didn't see this coming sooner. Tessa and I met at a birthday celebration, introduced by a mutual friend. She was humorous, confident, and had a no-nonsense approach that I enjoyed. I'd dated previously, but no one connected with me as she did. We hit it off quickly and moved in together after a year. Things felt natural, as if we were all on the same page about professions, marriage, and eventually creating a family. She was a freelance graphic designer, and I worked as a project manager for a technology business, so our schedules were very similar. Life wasn't glamorous, but it was enjoyable. We had been discussing getting married for a time, but it wasn't until last year that I proposed. Nothing fancy, just a simple supper at home for the two of us. Tessa seems thrilled. She cried, hugged me, and agreed. That night, we began to envision our future. A fall wedding, a limited guest list, and this charming little site by the lake. It seemed like everything was falling into place, or so I thought. The initial red flags were little and evident. They were little sneaky flaws that I ignored because I didn't want to overthink. For example, Tessa's enthusiasm for wedding preparation faded after a few months. She was all in at first, sending me Pinterest boards, searching through wedding outfits, and asking about small details like whether I preferred tulips or roses for the centerpieces. But suddenly it simply stopped. I'd ask her questions like, "Hey, have you chosen your bridesmaids yet?" And she'd shrug it aside. "Not yet, I'm still thinking about it," she said again. The same thing happened with her clothing, cake, and music. Every decision we'd been so enthused about had become something she wanted to postpone. "There's still time," she'd say. The wedding seemed like an afterthought. At the time, I told myself it was just stress. Wedding planning can be overwhelming, right? Plus, Tessa had a lot going on at work. I assumed she'd snap out of it eventually. What I didn't realize was that her lack of enthusiasm wasn't about the wedding, but about us. The true slap in the face happened one night while we were out with some friends. Someone brought up the dumb TikTok game, which you've probably seen. It's the one where you have to answer personal questions while keeping a straight face and not passing judgment. Everything was going well until someone said, "If you could relive one relationship, which would it be?" Without thinking, Tessa responded, "Oh, probably Dylan." Just like that. Dylan. Her college ex? The person who cheated on her. The moment she uttered that, the room became awkwardly quiet. She giggled awkwardly and attempted to backtrack, saying, "I mean, not that I'd want to. It's just a significant element of my past." I wanted to confront her right there, but we were among friends, so I let it go. Later, when we were alone, I asked her about it. What was it about Dylan? Why would you choose to revisit that relationship? She simply shrugged it off as if it were no big thing. "It was a stupid game, Liam. Don't take it so seriously." She grinned and shifted the subject. I didn't press it because, honestly, I didn't want to start a battle over something that could have been minor. But, deep down, it stayed with me. Following that, her behavior became more difficult to ignore. She was using her phone more frequently, going through her texts with a cheeky little smile. She began creating vague explanations for why she couldn't hang out or why she would cancel plans at the last minute. "Oh, sorry, I just have a lot of work to catch up on tonight," she'd typically remark. Or it may be, "I promised my mom I'd visit this weekend." The justifications were not particularly suspicious, but they were stacking up. It seemed like I had become less of a priority. Then came Friday night, which changed everything. I arrived home from work early, excited to spend the evening with Tessa. I was hoping we might order in and binge watch something, a quiet night. When I came in, however, the atmosphere seemed odd. She was seated on the couch, holding her laptop, but she wasn't working. She was staring at the screen, absolutely unfocused. "Hey, I'm home," I murmured, hoping to relieve the tension. "You're early," she said, as if it were a negative thing. I shrugged it off and went into the kitchen to begin preparing dinner, but the silence in the house was oppressive. Usually, she'd ask how my day was or tell me about her own. What about tonight? Nothing. Finally, I looked around and asked, "Is everything okay?" She shut her laptop and glanced at me. "Actually, there's something I need to talk to you about." And my stomach sank. You know how you feel when you know something horrible is going to happen but you can't stop it? That was me, standing there like an idiot with a spatula in one hand. I approached and sat across from her. "All right," I said. "What is going on?" She paused, as if she were trying to find the proper words. She just came out with it. "I've been thinking about us." "And about Dylan?" I swear that I almost laughed. "Dylan? Are you serious? What about him? She bit her lip and avoided my gaze. I suppose I need some time to consider things through. I'd like to take a break and see whether there's still something there with him. I couldn't believe what I heard. Do you want to take a break and date your ex? Are you out of your mind, Tessa? We've got engaged. It's not like that, she responded hurriedly, as if she could smooth things up. I just want to know if I'm making the right choice with you. And if it doesn't work out, I pledge to come back. That's when I discovered how deep her chutzpah was. She assumed I would sit around and wait for her to decide whether I was good enough. Something inside me moved at that very instant. I did not yell or blow up. I just sat there staring at her, wondering how the hell I hadn't seen this coming. I wasn't sure how to answer at first. My fiancée recently informed me that she wants to take a break to explore things with her ex, Dylan. What can you say to that? Finally, I asked. So, what does this break mean to you? My voice came out more calmer than I felt. She straightened up slightly, as if she had been ready for this conversation. I believe we need some space to figure things out. I'll take some time to see if my feelings for Dylan are genuine, and you are welcome to ponder on us as well. I couldn't believe the audacity. Wait, I replied, leaning forward. You're saying you need to date your ex, but I need to reflect on us? What kind of backwards logic is that? Tessa sighed, as if I were the one acting unreasonable. It's not about you doing something wrong, Liam. This is about me figuring out what I need. She seemed to have practiced this. The way she spoke, the way she avoided eye contact, it was as if she had already decided this was going to happen and simply wanted me to accept it. You know this sounds insane, right? I muttered. You don't just put your fiancé on hold while you go play what if with some guy who treats you like garbage. Her face tightened, and for the first time, I realized how stubborn she could be. I'm not asking for permission, Liam, I'm telling you what I need. That one landed differently. I wasn't just sad anymore, I was angry. I stood up and began pacing, hoping to calm myself down. So what, Tessa? You're just going to pack a bag and head over to Dylan's place? Is that your big plan? No, she insisted. It's not like that, I don't know what it looks like yet, but I need clarity before we move forward. I owe it to myself to know I'm making the right decision. You owe it to yourself? I asked, laughing cruelly. And what about what you owe me? We're engaged, Tessa? We're supposed to be building a life together, and now you're telling me you need to test drive your ex to make sure I'm good enough? I never said you weren't good enough, she replied, her voice rising. But if we're going to spend the rest of our lives together, I have to be certain. And right now I'm not. That was it. She wasn't simply interested in exploring things with Dylan, she was also unsure about me. Even after 4 years together and all of our plans, she was still unsure. It struck me all at once. She hadn't realized how painful and stupid her plea was. She believed this was reasonable, that I'd just sit there while she figured out whatever foolishness was going through her head. I stopped pacing and glanced at her, really stared at her. You know what? Sure, I responded, my tone bland. Take your break. She blinked, surprised by how quickly I agreed. Liam, I'm not trying to hurt you. I need space to figure things out. I nodded and kept my expression bland. All right. If that's what you need. She paused, as if she expected me to argue or fight for her. When I didn't, she stood up, took out her laptop, and murmured, I'll stay at my mom's for a bit. This isn't forever. We'll talk when I've had some time. Okay, I replied simply. She looked at me, wondering how to answer, and then disappeared into the bedroom. I could hear her moving around and throwing items into a bag. I remained calm on the couch, but my mind was already turning. If she really wants a break, that's okay. Let her have it. Several minutes later, I heard the front door close. She was gone, perhaps believing she had abandoned me here to wait and worry. She had no idea I was not going to sit around and do nothing. She could have her fantasy, but I had other ideas now. I'll provide an update once I've set some things in motion. This is not going to end the way she expects it to. Update 1. Thank you for your feedback and suggestions on my last post. A lot has happened this week, and I'd like to report how things are going. First and foremost, I want to thank everyone in this community for their wonderful support. Many of you mentioned that I don't just sit around waiting, and you were correct. I've been busy putting everything into motion. First, I called my pal Noah. He's been my best friend since college, and he's not the type of man to sugarcoat things. After hearing the full story, he brought over pizza, and we spent the entire night scheming. Dude, you realize she's going to try to crawl back once things don't work out with Dylan, right? Noah reminded him. He was correct, of course. The more we talked, the more obvious it became that I needed to be proactive. This was not about vengeance, it was about regaining control of my life. I began with the house. Tessa doesn't seem to recall that it's entirely in my name. She loves to act as if it's our home, always talking about the curtains and paint colors she chose, yet I'm the one who pays the mortgage. I phoned a realtor first thing Monday morning. The realtor came by to see the property, and we decided to list it right away. The market in our neighborhood is now hot, and we already have several potential purchasers. Tessa has no idea. She probably believes I'm sitting here in our shared home, waiting for her to sort out her feelings. The next step was to gradually remove her from my life. You remember the live, laugh, love placards she insisted on putting up? Gone. Did she have to have those beautiful throw pillows? Donated. Her clothing and personal belongings that she left behind? I carefully packaged them all up. But this is where I became strategic. Instead of just dropping her belongings off at her mother's house or having her come fetch them, I hired a moving company. They took everything to her mother's house and left a short note. Here's your stuff. Good luck with Dylan. I know some of you may think this is petty, but I disagree. I'm not being vengeful, I'm being efficient. She wanted some room to think things through? Well, she's got it, literally. The most fascinating moment came when mutual friends began asking questions. Instead of playing the victim or slandering her, I simply stated the truth. Tessa decided she needed to explore things with her ex before committing to marriage. I decided I deserve better than being someone's backup plan. You should watch how people respond to that. No drama, no accusations, just facts. It's amazing how rapidly the story changes when you don't try to control it. I've also been making moves at work. I applied for a position at our West Coast office that I'd been considering for a long time. If the house sells, which seems quite likely, and I get this job, I'll be starting over on the other side of the country. Tessa has attempted to contact me several times this week, first with lighthearted texts like, "Hope you're doing okay," and progressing to progressively concerned messages when she learned I was actually making changes rather than simply waiting around. Yesterday, she was in a panic when her mother informed her that the boxes had been delivered. "What are you doing? Why are you acting like this is over?" I kept my response simple. "Because it is over, Tessa. You made your choice, and now I'm making mine." She began crying, claiming that she simply wanted time to figure things out, that I was being quick, and that this was not what she meant when she asked for a break. "What did you expect?" I questioned her. "That I'd sit here like a faithful puppy while you test drove your ex? That's not how this works." "But what if I realize you're the one I want?" She was weeping. "Then you'll have learned a valuable lesson about not taking people for granted," I said before hanging up the phone. The weird thing is that I'm no longer upset. Instead, I feel liberated. Every box I pack, every move I make feels like I'm reclaiming parts of myself that I didn't realize I'd given up. Noah came by again yesterday to assist me with packing the house. He also saw the change in me. "You seem different," he observed. "More focused?" He's correct. I'm different. When Tessa first revealed her desire to pursue things with Dylan, I felt like my world was falling. Now I see it wasn't my world collapsing, but rather the false reality I'd been living in finally disintegrating. I have more things in the works, but I will hold them for the next update. For the time being, I'll simply say this. Sometimes the greatest way to respond to someone treating you as an option is to completely remove yourself from their list of options. Stay tuned. This narrative hasn't ended yet, and I have a feeling Tessa is finding that her break to straighten things out isn't going to go nearly as planned. Update 2. I appreciate all of the feedback on my recent update. Things have escalated significantly, and I'd like to tell you how the situation has evolved. Remember how I mentioned applying for the West Coast position? Okay, I got it. The timing could not be better. The house is under contract, and the closing is slated for next month. But that's only the beginning. What's particularly interesting is how Tessa's Dylan exploration is unfolding. Through mutual connections, I discovered that their restored passion isn't quite the fairy tale she envisioned. Apparently, 4 years haven't changed him much. He's still the untrustworthy guy who cheated on her in college. But here's when it gets good. Tessa has attempted to control the narrative on social media. She has been sharing vague, inspiring phrases about finding yourself and following your heart. So I decided to play the same game, but with a twist. I created a single factual post. Update on my life. Excited to announce I've accepted a position in San Francisco. Sometimes when one door closes, better ones open. Looking forward to this new chapter. The comments and texts began pouring in. People congratulated me, inquired about the relocation, and, of course, wondered about Tessa. I kept my answers basic and honest. We're no longer together. She wanted to explore other options, so I'm exploring mine too. This set off a fantastic chain reaction in our social circle. Remember those friends who weren't sure about the situation? Watching me handle this with grace as Tessa shares cryptic relationship quotations completely changed the atmosphere. Then came the professional consequences. Tessa's freelance design employment is primarily based on recommendations and networking. Sarah, 29F, a mutual contact in the computer field who used to refer many clients to Tessa, contacted me. I need to know what happened, Sarah explained over coffee. Tessa's telling people you're having a temporary separation to grow individually, but something feels off. I shared Sarah Tessa's note about wanting to date Dylan. Sarah's look said it all. She did not believe it. By the end of the week, numerous potential clients had pushed back their projects with Tessa, not because I said anything nasty, but because, honestly, who wants to work with someone who takes commitment so lightly? Tessa sensed the shift. Her texts become more frequent and frantic. Why are you telling people about Dylan? You're ruining my reputation. This isn't fair, I just needed time to think. I answered to the last one. You got what you wanted, time and space, how I spend mine is no longer your concern. Then came the turning point. Dylan, in his wonderful wisdom, shared a photo of them together at the restaurant where Tessa and I had our first date. It was evident she was attempting to recreate our history with him. It was both sad and funny. The post didn't last long, but the damage was done. Our friends witnessed it, and the remaining few individuals who supported Tessa's "Finding Myself" story lost respect for her. Even her own sister contacted me. I'm so sorry about how she's handling this. You deserve better. What is the most satisfying part? I didn't have to be vengeful. I simply lived my life freely and honestly, whereas Tessa attempted to play both sides. The truth has a way of emerging. She visited my office yesterday. Dylan seemed to have already revealed his true colors, flirting with other women, being untrustworthy, a familiar story. She was crying. I made a huge mistake, she cried. I was scared of commitment. I thought I needed to know if there was something better out there, but I was wrong. You're the best thing that ever happened to me. I simply gazed at her calmly. No, Tessa. The best thing that ever happened to me was you showing your true colors before we got married. She attempted to argue, claiming that we could fix this, that she would go to counseling, and that she would prove she could be trusted again. I simply shook my head. You don't get it, do you? This isn't about Dylan anymore. This is about you thinking you could keep me as a backup while you explore your options. That's not love, that's convenience. She left my office distraught, but I felt better than ever. The house closes next week, the majority of my belongings are packed, and my new life in San Francisco begins in a month. The funny thing is that some folks think I'm being overly tough. Everyone makes mistakes, they explain. However, this was not a mistake, it was a choice. There are actually several options available. Each time she texted Dylan. Every time, she lied about where she was. She spent every second planning to put our romance on hold. These were all options. I'll provide another update once the move is complete. For the time being, I'll leave you with this. Sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even, but rather getting better. And this is exactly what I'm doing. Next update. Update 3. Thank you for following my journey. This will be my final update, and I have some interesting developments to report. San Francisco is everything I imagined it would be. My new apartment has a stunning view of the bay, and the tech scene here is fantastic. My new office team is fantastic. It's refreshing to be around people who prioritize growth and innovation over drama. But first, let me catch you up on how things ended back home. The closing went smoothly, and the house actually sold for more than the asking price. It was interesting to see Tessa's reaction after finding out through mutual friends. She didn't believe I'd sold the house until she drove by and saw the new owners move in. Here's where it got really interesting. Remember Dylan? He reached out to me, of all people. He sent me a long message about how he never meant to cause problems and that Tessa had contacted him first, months before she requested the break. Tessa had been planning her little exploration for quite some time. She had been messaging Dylan for months, carefully laying the groundwork for her backup strategy. What's with the irony? Dylan ended their relationship because, as he put it, if she could do this to you, she could do it to anyone. Tessa's professional fallout has been significant. Remember all the clients she'd lined up? Most of them discovered other designers, not because I said anything, but because word spreads in the industry. One of her largest clients really contacted me. We heard what happened with the engagement, they told us. We're looking for someone who can commit to long-term projects. Do you know any reliable designers? I recommended a talented acquaintance of mine, and she received the contract. Karma, I suppose. Tessa's social media meltdown has been something to see. Then came the sorrowful quotations about losing your sweetheart, followed by angry posts about toxic people who can't handle growth. Finally, she made urgent attempts to show everyone how delighted she was. The final one was quite interesting. She wrote about beginning her own design firm. 3 days later, she began sending out job applications. Last week, her sister contacted me again. Tessa has apparently been staying with their parents, stating she needs time to heal from our separation. Her sister's exact words were, "She really thought you'd wait for her. When you sold the house and moved, it broke her fantasy completely." The most reassuring moment occurred during a video call with our old friend group. They were telling me about local gossip, and someone described seeing Tessa at a coffee shop, explaining to a potential customer why her portfolio website was down. Apparently, she forgot that I was the one who set it up and maintained it. She couldn't figure out how to restore her hosting membership when it expired. Not my concern anymore. My new life here is coming together well. I've joined a local rock climbing club, begun taking Spanish lessons, and even adopted a dog from a local shelter. His name is Zeus, and he's a greater companion than my ex-fiancée. The tech community here is really inviting. Last week, I was invited to speak at a developer conference, which would not have happened if I had stayed at home. It's amazing what you can accomplish when you're not dragging dead weight. I had one last interaction with Tessa. She sent me an email requesting some old images from our shared cloud storage. I had previously downloaded what I wanted and terminated the account several weeks ago. Her email stated, "I know you're trying to erase me from your life, but you can't just delete our memories. Those 4 years meant something." My reply was simple. "You're right. Those years taught me what I don't want in a partner. Thanks for the lesson." Some mutual acquaintances believe I am being very harsh and should be more understanding of her moment of confusion. However, that wasn't a moment. It was a calculated decision to keep me as a safety net while she pursued what she believed to be a better option. What is the most important thing I've learned from all of this? Sometimes the worst things that happen to you result in the best outcomes. If Tessa hadn't shown her true colors, I could have married her, only to learn her genuine personality years later, possibly with children in the mix. Instead, I'm in a lovely city with a wonderful job, making new friends, and feeling optimistic about the future. The anguish of betrayal has been replaced by thankfulness for the gunshot avoided. Thank you to everyone who has followed the story and offered advice. Your encouragement helped me remain strong when I might have faltered. And for anyone going through a similar situation, know this. When someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. Don't wait around for them to alter their mind about you. Life is too short to be someone's backup plan. Sometimes the best thing you can do is walk away and make things better for yourself. That's it for now, guys. This chapter of my life has officially ended, and I couldn't be more excited for the next one to begin. Take care, and thank you for everything. Am I the asshole for telling my grandfather my family treated me as an outsider at Thanksgiving, causing him to cut off their financial support? On Thanksgiving morning, as I awoke in my Chicago apartment, the customary fear crept into my heart. Another year brings another family reunion. This year's event took place at the Breakers, a premium resort hotel in Palm Beach, Florida. It was our yearly family trip, and my grandfather covered all expenses. I sighed deeply as I finished checking my suitcase. I looked at my reflection in the mirror. I'm Helen Walker, a 33-year-old research director at a pharmaceutical business making $160,000 per year and living alone in Chicago. I've progressively increased my assets through diligent investing. Money is necessary, but dignity is far more valuable. My grandfather's words rang through my thoughts. He is a great businessman who built his money on building. He taught me everything I know about financial management. He has been enthusiastically teaching me about investing and asset management since I was a child. He's the only one in the family who fully understands me. In stark contrast is my sister Catherine, a former flight attendant who is now a full-time housewife. She appears to be well off, living with her husband and 7-year-old kid. However, this lifestyle would be impossible to maintain without our grandfather's monthly support. Their hefty mortgage payments, auto loans, and daughter's private school tuition are all covered by grandfather's assistance. Catherine's social media feed is still loaded with gorgeous images about new designer bags, costly dinners, and luxurious vacations. She seemed obsessed with depicting a lifestyle that is distant from reality. My parents are similar. George and Margaret look to be living a pleasant retirement in Florida, but that too would be unsustainable without grandfather's assistance. Their retirement fund planning, the deposit for the posh retirement home, It all rests on grandfather. My parents have always been chilly to me yet indulgent to my sister. That has not altered since childhood. During my undergraduate years, I used scholarships to pay for my tuition and worked part-time to supplement my income. Meanwhile, my sister relied solely on our parents for everything, from studies abroad to living expenses. The disparity is a terrible memory. Another of grandfather's sayings was, "Become someone who can stand on their own 2 feet." I lived by those principles, studying and worked tirelessly to achieve independence. I made a profession in the pharmaceutical sector, increased my assets through investments, and created a life that does not require anyone's assistance. My own hard work paid for the high-rise flat with a view of Chicago's cityscape. Moderate luxury within my means is the lifestyle I've chosen. As I lifted my bag, my uneasiness about this year's Thanksgiving increased. Every year, our family's warped relationships worsen. My sister's competition for appearances, our parents' prejudiced adoration, and grandfather's concerned expression. In the taxi to the airport, I thought about this year's trip. The Breakers, a prominent 5-star hotel founded in 1896, features Italian Renaissance architecture and magnificent suites costing more than $800 per night. The Thanksgiving special supper was estimated to cost $200 per person. Despite the opulent surroundings, our family's reality was weak and skewed. My sister's lavish lifestyle and our parents' comfortable retirement were all castles constructed on the sand of grandfather's approval. This year, those misconceptions were about to hit their limit. Everyone must have observed, but no one dared to speak about the truth that awaited us. On Thanksgiving Day, Florida's warm sunlight streamed through the taxi window from Palm Beach International Airport to the Breakers. I arrived at the luxury resort in good weather. I was the last to arrive. I strolled inside the gorgeous Italian Renaissance-style edifice, carrying my navy Rimowa luggage. My basic yet lovely theory dress had wrinkled somewhat from the lengthy travel. The lobby extended out into a neat, respectable area. Luxurious chandeliers gleamed above, as footsteps echoed silently on the marble floor below. Other visitors had already begun to enjoy their Thanksgiving afternoon in their own unique ways. On my way to the front desk, I saw my folks. They appeared to be discussing something in a quiet corner of the foyer. Mother wore what appeared to be a new resort dress, while father dressed casually and appropriately for his age. They averted their gaze as soon as our eyes met. "Miss Walker, I apologize, but I cannot find your reservation," the front desk staff replied sheepishly. They continued examining the screen, unable to conceal their astonishment. "I can see the reservations for your family members, but..." At that point, the sound of expensive heels approached. I turned to find Catherine approaching us with a proud look, a Hermès Birkin bag on her arm, and a Cartier watch shining. "Oh, Helen finally made it," her voice was deliberately sarcastic. As other customers focused their attention on us, the front desk workers proceeded to examine the system. "How strange that there's no reservation," Catherine continued, her voice rising in volume, evidently intended to attract attention. Her Louis Vuitton suitcase stood out in comparison to my blue case. "Actually," Catherine drew closer with a triumphant smile, "I only made reservations for our family." Her words resonated around the foyer. "A room for me, my husband, and daughter, and one for mom and dad. Just for the real family, you see." A minute of quiet occurred. The front desk personnel were speechless, and our parents turned away even farther. The air around me seemed frozen. I took a slow deep breath and said without changing my expression, "I see. Then I'll leave." My voice came out more calmly than I expected. I adjusted my grasp on the suitcase handle and pleasantly nodded to the front desk workers. I took out my smartphone and launched the taxi-hailing app. "Wait," Catherine's voice increased slightly, but I was already about to exit the foyer. Feeling the front desk staff's sympathetic look, I began strolling toward the entrance. My sister, despite being caught off guard by this unexpected event, maintained a triumphant grin. Our parents stood uncomfortable and frozen in place. Only my footsteps resonated through the hushed lobby. The afternoon sunshine coming through the main door seemed unusually bright. While waiting for the taxi, the palm trees swung in the gentle breeze. The Thanksgiving weekend I had planned to spend at this luxurious resort had come to an end in a matter of minutes. However, in this moment, a peculiar sense of release washed over my emotions. Grandfather's words resurfaced. "Become someone who can stand on their own 2 feet." I felt like I now understood what he meant. During the few minutes I waited for the taxi, I looked at the hotel's stunning facade. The Adam-style architecture recounted the story of nearly a century of history. Luxury cars decorated lavishly for Thanksgiving continued to arrive, accompanied by well-dressed families. Through the lobby glass, I could see my niece, Amy, in a costly dress that was inappropriate for a 7-year-old. She was fidgeting behind her mother, possibly searching for me. Every Thanksgiving, it was my tradition to bring her a gift. This year, I had prepared a pearl hair clip, which was still well wrapped in my suitcase. As I entered the waiting taxi, I informed the driver, Palm Beach International Airport. On my smartphone, I was already looking for the next available flight to Chicago. Though airfares were high during Thanksgiving, this did not concern me at all. Rather, the emotional energy I'd squandered each year over this season appeared far more costly. The Breakers building appeared smaller in the rearview mirror. Its form, glistening in the afternoon sun, seemed to represent our family's apparent glamour. And suddenly the first break had emerged in the facade. I had no idea what would happen next, but one thing was certain, there was no going back. The taxis inside created a peaceful environment away from the outside noise. The air conditioning maintained a pleasant chill, and the luxury leather chairs gradually relieved the stress from earlier. Outside the window, Palm Beach's characteristic resort panorama flowed past, with neatly aligned palm trees, white luxury mansions, and occasional glimpses of the Atlantic's shimmering surface. Views that would typically captivate me seemed curiously distant. I pulled out my smartphone and dialed my grandfather's number without hesitation. The ringtone appeared to last longer than normal before he eventually responded. "Helen, what is wrong?" Grandfather's voice maintained its customary calm. "I have something to report," I said, speaking in a straightforward manner. I described the events at the hotel without emotion, just the facts. The missed reservation, Catherine's words, and how I left. I described everything chronologically. On the other end of the telephone, I could hear grandfather's breathing becoming slightly rougher. He was definitely able to contain his rage. However, I added no words of condolence. "I understand. I'll handle this from here," said grandfather, his voice low and husky. In those simple remarks was a foreshadowing of what was to come. Shortly after hanging up, incoming calls began to come in. First, Catherine reported over 10 missed calls in 15 minutes. "Helen, Amy wants to see you. She was looking forward to our yearly Thanksgiving. Can't you consider a child's feelings?" Her text continued. "My friends are coming to dinner tonight. I had planned to share a great family Thanksgiving photo on Instagram. Do you understand how uncomfortable this scenario is?" Catherine's voice became increasingly frantic. Between these calls, we started receiving emails from our parents. "We could have created another room," Mother wrote, "but as Catherine mentioned, we prioritize our genuine family. Are you independent now?" Father's email was even more inhumane. "Catherine has a family, a husband and a child. You understand, correct? Can't you just put up with it for Thanksgiving?" The following email contained spiteful calculations. "That's always been your problem, only thinking about yourself, never considering the family." Mother continued, her tone making me appear like the villain. "We had everything scheduled for social media updates. We were meant to take beautiful photographs of you and Amy. Everything is ruined now." My chest clenched as I read each message, but these were phrases I should be used to by now. My sister and I have been subjected to this type of bigotry since we were children. As the taxi approached the airport, a new wave of messages flooded in. "Amy is crying because you are selfish. She had been waiting so long to see her aunt," Catherine wrote, still using her daughter as a shield. Behind her words, I simply saw vanity and pride. Mother sent additional sarcastic emails. "Poor Catherine. If you understood how concerned she is about Amy's future, you'd understand. However, children's education requires money." However, at this moment, I felt no need to respond. If anything, I was relieved that they had displayed such obvious real colors. Just before we arrived at the airport, grandfather sent us an email. "I am proud of your decision. I understand everything." When I heard those words, my eyes welled up with quiet resolve rather than despair. It represented the start of a new chapter. My smartphone continued to get repeated calls. Anxious messages from Catherine demanding, "Answer the phone right away." Accusatory emails from my parents alleged, "Your selfishness is tearing the family apart." However, I had already reached a point where no one's voice could reach me. I got out of the taxi and started heading toward the international terminal. While purchasing my travel to Chicago, I had a peculiar feeling of emancipation. This was the moment of liberation from the bogus, real family. About 30 minutes after boarding the plane heading for Chicago, grandfather sent a new email. All family members were among the awardees. "The following is my final decision to be announced," grandfather began the email in his usual dignified tone. "On Thanksgiving, an incident occurred that severely harmed our family's dignity. The callous treatment of Helen is an insult to the Walker family name and cannot be permitted under any circumstances. I am immediately freezing all financial support for George, Margaret and Catherine. I must remind you that your opulent lifestyles are completely dependent on my assistance. Those who have lost sight of family's essence, wallowing in vanity and pretense, are no longer eligible for such privilege. Just as I finished reading, calls from my sister started rolling in. Her worry was clear from the frequency of incoming calls. "Helen, please answer the phone. Convince Grandpa," she said. Messages left on voicemail documented my sister's panicked voice. It was obvious that her life would become untenable without the monthly payments. All of her living expenses were based on grandfather's monthly support of $30,000. Emails from our parents also poured in. Their earlier arrogance vanished, replaced by pathetic pleading. "Helen, this is about our retirement. Could you please talk to your grandfather again?" The $150,000 deposit for their booked luxury retirement home would be forfeited, and their medical insurance benefits would be discontinued. Our parents appeared to be panicked by the prospect of their retirement security crumbling in an instant. "Do something, he'll listen if it's you, won't he?" Mother's email included unusual words of remorse. "I'm sorry for saying such terrible things earlier, but this is a family crisis." I silently turned off my smartphone. A large sea of clouds stretched outside the window. The beautiful family Thanksgiving images that had been shared on social media year after year would not be uploaded this year. Catherine may suffer a greater blow than the financial consequences. The jet was flying steadily into Chicago with no turbulence. The individual next to me appeared to be planning Thanksgiving dinner, reviewing recipes on their smartphone. Normally, at this point, I would have been in the hotel lounge giving Amy her present. When I arrived in Chicago and connected to my house Wi-Fi, I saw over 100 unread messages. Most were from my sister, and their content became increasingly frenzied. "What am I supposed to do? I won't be able to pay the loans. What about Amy's school fees?" Emails from our parents had also become extremely serious. "We might not be able to get the retirement home deposit back. What are we supposed to do now? I can't sleep at night thinking about the medical insurance." However, what grabbed the most attention was grandfather's final notice, which was distributed to all family members. "This measure is irreversible. Consider it the consequence of your own actions. Any objection to my decision will result in the termination of all remaining support." I calmly read the incoming mails. Their previously disdainful demeanor had entirely turned into desperate appeals. Never before has each family member's genuine nature been displayed so vividly. I set down my smartphone and brewed tea in the kitchen. By now, I should have been enjoying the hotel's sumptuous dinner, a $200 Thanksgiving special course per person. Remembering that sum made me smile somewhat. Every year, my sister's family would post about this opulent supper on social media, despite the fact that they were struggling to make monthly credit card payments. A second call arrived, this time from my sister's husband. Words condemning his wife's spending habits were mixed in with the panic and perplexity. It appeared that fissures were forming in their marriage as well. Our parents sent more detailed pleas. The retirement home won't refund the $150,000 advance payment. Medical insurance will be self-paid from next month. Because of you, our retirement. Following those statements, he repeatedly defended my sister and criticized me. It was as if they had learned nothing. I pulled a lemon out of the refrigerator and put it in my tea. Tomorrow, I will go back to work as usual. The pharmaceutical company's initiative anticipated further study of data analysis. A $160,000 annual salary and steadily accumulating investment trusts, a solid life foundation developed via my own labor. The night panorama of Chicago from outside the window gleamed silently. The lights of the high-rise buildings resemble stars. Suddenly, I remembered my credit card statement. Full payment every month, moderate luxury within my means, and no debt. Grandfather's favorite saying came back to me. Vanity is for others. Savings are for yourself. In this city, I had carved myself my own path. As grandfather mentioned, I had matured into a self-sufficient individual. And now I was convinced that I had made the proper decision. Incoming calls continued to ring on my smartphone, but the voices were no longer audible to me. 2 weeks after Thanksgiving, in early December, Chicago had its first snowfall. Days were spent absorbed in new initiatives at the pharmaceutical company's lab. Despite the monotony of the everyday routine, my family's condition has changed dramatically. The alterations were initially visible on social media. My sister's Instagram, which had been updated virtually every day, had suddenly gone silent. Her most recent image, from the day before Thanksgiving, was a shot of her Hermes purse at an exclusive restaurant, along with the hashtag Dream Lifestyle. The compliments, "What a wonderful life," now appeared terribly sarcastic. Father's emails eventually expressed genuine regret. "I'm reflecting on our years of extravagant living. We spoiled Catherine too much, and we were cold to you. I'm sorry. Similar messages arrived from mother. With their medical insurance subsidies removed, they were suddenly aware of the true expense of healthcare. Our pension alone is nowhere near enough. I finally understood how luxurious we were living. Catherine's position was far more severe. I got an unexpected call from her spouse. I've discovered hidden debts she kept secret. I'm shocked by the credit card bills. We can't maintain this lifestyle anymore. With grandfather's backing abruptly withdrawn, their opulent facade crumbled. We're considering moving to a cheaper house, looking at public schools for Amy too, according to him. His voice was filled with tiredness and resignation. Catherine cries every night. Their marriage itself appeared to be in peril. In comparison, my life has stayed quiet. I arrived at work at 8 a.m. He returned home at 6 p.m. Weekends were spent attending financial study groups, revising my saving strategies, and living within my means. I was just elevated to team leader for a new research project. My pay is likely to improve steadily. Investment trust activities are progressing smoothly, with no concerns for the future. Grandfather's words resonated in my mind. Vanity brings momentary satisfaction, savings bring lifelong peace of mind. The weight of grandfather's comments was now felt strongly by the entire family. While my parents were concerned about retirement and security, and my sister was struggling with debt payback, I was simply living my normal life. Over the last 2 weeks, the number of emails and phone calls has substantially decreased. The urgent contacts that arrived daily during the first few days have reduced to once or twice a week. Their content, too, was rapidly turning towards resignation. Amy will be transferring to public school. She'll take the school bus. My sister's most recent email demonstrated symptoms of embracing reality. The idyllic private school existence she had shared on social media would never be seen again. Our parents were also thinking about moving from their luxury Florida neighborhood to a cheap condominium since they were having trouble paying their medical bills. Their fantasy of a comfortable retirement had fallen quickly. We've been living with wrong values for years. That was written in father's most recent email. It was unclear whether this awareness would serve as a catalyst for the restoration of actual family relationships. Last week, I received a simple email from grandfather. Awakening to the truth of life sometimes brings pain, but it's necessary pain. Your decision gave them an important lesson. I didn't respond. I quietly saved the email. New stars twinkled in the cold sky over Chicago. 3 months after Thanksgiving, early indications of spring began to surface in Chicago. My life had not altered, rather, it had gotten more meaningful. The new project at the pharmaceutical company was going well, and last week I received word of another promotion. My achievements as research director were recognized, and my compensation was raised to $200,000. Investment trust activities were likewise performing well, with assets increasing steadily. From my office window, I could view the wide surface of Lake Michigan. The waves sparkled in the spring sunlight, conveying a peaceful hope. New research data was piling up on my desk. My most valuable time was spent working. Grandfather recently sent me a simple pearl necklace for my birthday. The attached card contained a single phrase in his usual, exquisite handwriting. True brilliance dwells in those who stand on their own feet. I'd started having little touch with my folks. They'd relocated from their upscale Florida community to a more inexpensive condominium. Despite their struggles with medical bill payments, they appeared to be gradually adjusting to reality. Luxury brings momentary joy, but there's genuine security in a grounded lifestyle. Mother wrote in an email showing genuine understanding for the first time. My sister's family had relocated to a typical suburban neighborhood. Amy had started attending public school and was becoming accustomed to riding the school bus. Catherine's social media accounts remained inactive. How empty it all seems now, posting just to keep up appearances, she stated in an unusual email. Days spent struggling with credit card payments tested their marriage, but they were no longer avoiding reality. I had started setting new ambitions. I intended to achieve more in pharmaceutical research and eventually run my own research team. I hoped to share my knowledge and experience with young scholars. During the holidays, I attended finance and economics study groups. The individuals I met there lived strong, practical lives. The real chats, devoid of pretension and ego, were refreshing. The Thanksgiving incident taught each family member valuable lessons, including the value of financial independence, the futility of a pretentious lifestyle, and, most importantly, the true definition of family. Grandfather's final words lingered in my heart. Real bonds can only be born after overcoming hardship. In my desk drawer, the pearl hair clip I had prepared as Amy's gift was still nicely wrapped. Perhaps someday, when she discovers actual value, When she appreciates the importance of standing on her own 2 feet rather than counting social media likes, this clip will be appropriate to show her. Outside the window, early spring winds rustled through the street trees, signaling the start of a new season. My brother got my fiancée pregnant before our wedding. My family wants to forgive me, but I cut ties and moved away. This is going to be a long story, and it's exactly as strange as it sounds. I will try to be as concise as possible, but there is a lot to discuss. I don't care if anyone believes this or not. It's so ridiculous that I have to rant. Also, I'm not going to sugarcoat anything, but I'll leave out any details that could identify me to anyone unfamiliar with the situation. I'm 32 years old, and up until a few months ago, I was engaged to my girlfriend of 5 years, Sarah. My younger brother Mike is 29 years old and has always been our family's golden child. To properly understand the seriousness of this betrayal and why it affected me so hard, I need to provide some context for our family dynamics and how we reached this point. Growing up, Mike could do no wrong in our parents' eyes, whereas I was continually admonished and punished for little offenses. This was not your average sibling rivalry or subtle partiality. It was outright and intense. If Mike broke something, I'd be accused. If he began a fight, I would be grounded. If we both got straight A's, Mike would get a new video game console, and I'd get a pat on the back and a reminder to keep it up. Our parents, Tom and Linda, were constantly making excuses for their favoritism. Mike's younger? He needs more attention. You're the older one, you should know better. Mike's just more sensitive, we have to be careful with him. The constant barrage of unreasonable standards and gaslighting made me feel useless and disliked in my own home. As we grew older, the favoritism became more obvious. And when I was accepted to a good college on a partial scholarship, my parents barely mentioned it. When Mike opted to attend community college, they gave him a big party and purchased him a car for commuting. Never mind that I had been biking 5 miles each way to my part-time job for several years. I moved out as quickly as possible to get away from the harmful surroundings. I supported myself in college by working 2 jobs and taking out loans. Meanwhile, Mike dropped out of community college after just 1 semester, claiming that it wasn't for him. Our parents commended him for knowing himself, rather than conforming to societal expectations. They even backed his string of unsuccessful business projects over the years, regardless of how badly planned or hopeless they were. No matter how much distance I tried to build, my family was always able to pull me back in. Holiday dinners were a nightmare of subtle insults and less than subtle comparisons. Are you still in that entry-level position? Well, Mike is thinking of starting another business. He's very entrepreneurial. Never mind that I was slowly developing a secure job while Mike squandered our parents' retirement savings. Despite everything, I attempted to keep contact with Mike. He was still my brother after all. However, it was always one-sided. I'd reach out to connect, but he'd either ignore me or find a way to make the conversation competitive. If I was promoted, Mike would suddenly have a large opportunity come up. If I began dating someone, Mike would undoubtedly be in a serious relationship. I met Sarah while trying to reunite with Mike. She was a friend of one of Mike's brief romantic relationships, and we hit it off right away. Sarah was everything I wanted in a partner: intelligent, amusing, caring, and breathtakingly gorgeous. We started dating, and for the first time in my life, I felt completely satisfied and cherished. My folks, however, were not delighted. They made snide jokes about Sarah being out of my league, and questioned what she saw in me. Mike, on the other hand, took an uncommon interest in my life. He was always asking about Sarah, wanting to know everything about her. At the moment, I was simply relieved that he appeared to be interested in something in my life. Looking back, I should have seen the red flags. Sarah and I moved in together after a year of dating, and it was great. We both had successful careers, traveled much, and discussed our future plans. For the first time, I began to believe that I could have the life I had always desired. A successful profession, a loving partner, and possibly children someday. On our 4th anniversary, I proposed to Sarah. It wasn't anything extravagant, just a nice supper at home and a moving speech. I was overjoyed when she said yes. We planned on having a long engagement and taking our time planning the wedding. We weren't in a hurry. We had our entire lives ahead of us, or so I believed. When we informed my family of our engagement, their emotions were diverse, to say the least. My mother put on a fake smile and said, "Oh, how nice," in a tone that implied it was anything but. My father grunted and said, "Good luck with that," before returning to his television. Mike had the oddest reaction. He congratulated us, but his smile was unnerving, almost predatory. I disregarded it at the time, attributing it to my own fears. The following year was dominated by wedding preparations and job stress. Sarah and I were both working hard hours to save for our wedding and a down payment on a home. We weren't seeing each other as much as we used to, but I figured it was simply a phase. Every relationship has difficulties, right? Looking back, I should have noticed the symptoms. Sarah became distant, always on her phone, smiling at texts she dismissed as coming from work friends. She began going out more with her friends, returning home late and smelling of booze and cologne. I still trusted her entirely. I never imagined her cheating, let alone with my own brother. Sarah began to behave strangely a few months ago. She was temperamental, angry, and frequently nauseated. I was excited about the chance that she was pregnant. We hadn't been trying, but we had discussed having children someday. I began brainstorming methods to help her, such as nursery colors and baby names. Then, one night, she sat me down, tears running down her cheeks, and delivered the bombshell. She was pregnant, but the baby was not mine. I was stunned. Yes, we hadn't been intimate much lately because of our tight schedules, but I never anticipated her to cheat. When I asked who the father was, she broke down and muttered, "It's Mike." My entire universe came crumbling down at that point. Everything I thought I knew, everything I had based my existence on, was shattered. I couldn't breathe or think because I was overcome with feelings of betrayal and grief. Sarah attempted to explain, her words falling out between sobs. Apparently, it began during our engagement party. Mike had approached her, saying she was making a mistake by marrying me. He used her weaknesses, telling her she deserved better and that he could offer her everything I couldn't. It wasn't a one-time event, they'd been having an affair for months. I kicked Sarah out that night. I couldn't stomach looking at her or being in the same room as the lady who had deceived me so totally. She begged me to forgive her, saying it was a mistake and she loved me. But all I could think about was how many times she had lied to me, slept with my brother, and done so while wearing the ring I had given her. After Sarah departed, I confronted Mike. I can't recall what I said. It was all a swirl of wrath and pain. At first, he tried to dismiss it as a drunken mistake that didn't mean anything. But when I questioned him, he grew defensive, saying, "Well, maybe if you'd been a better fiancé, she wouldn't have come to me." I saw red. I got in my car and headed to his apartment, intending to make him regret what he said. I'm not sure what I was planning to accomplish, but when I arrived, our parents were already present. Mike presumably called them first, telling them about Sarah seducing him and apologizing. And you know what? They believed him. They always do. My mother immediately began lecturing me about forgiveness and family, while my father stood there with his arms crossed, obviously disappointed in me but not in his beloved Mike. I tried to explain what had happened, but they refused to listen. They kept encouraging me to forgive Mike and support Sarah during her pregnancy because family comes first. I lost it. Years of pent-up hatred and anger finally came out. I told them how I felt about their strange sense of dedication, how they had always preferred Mike over me and had never taken my side or backed me. I informed Mike that he was no longer my brother, that he had died for me. I told my parents they could have the son they'd always wanted because they no longer had me. I stormed away, ignoring their shouts and pleads. I traveled for hours without a destination in mind, simply wanting to get away from everything and everyone. When I finally arrived home, I saw dozens of missed calls and messages. Sarah begged for another opportunity, and Mike alternated between apologies and accusations. Most of the messages, however, came from my parents, who demanded that I grow up and make amends. I disregarded them all. I rarely ate or slept. I called out of work, using up all of my vacation days. I couldn't face anyone or bear the thought of explaining what had happened. I just sat in my apartment, going over every detail of my relationship with Sarah and every encounter with Mike, trying to find out where I went wrong. It has been 3 months now. To cope with everything, I moved to a new apartment, changed my phone number, and began treatment. But my family refuses to quit up. Despite my efforts to break off communication, they continue to intrude into my life. They've started coming up at my office, hoping to ambush me and demand a reconciliation. My mother approaches me in the parking lot, sobbing about how I'm tearing the family apart. My father leaves scathing voicemail messages, imploring me to man up and forgive Mike. Mike himself has attempted to approach me multiple times, but I have managed to dodge him thus far. They've even used flying monkeys, extended family members dressed as concerned parties, to guilt trip me into forgiving Mike. Aunts, and cousins I haven't spoken to in years suddenly phone, reminding me how important family is and how I should let bygones be bygones. It's as if they live in a parallel reality where Mike and Sarah made a minor mistake rather than a life-altering betrayal. I received a message from Sarah yesterday. She is keeping the baby and intends to co-parent with Mike. And guess what? My parents are pleased to become grandparents, conveniently ignoring the circumstances and the disparaging remarks they made about Sarah when she was with me. The letter was filled with apologies and explanations, including how she and Mike found real love amidst this horrific scenario. She even had the nerve to say that she hopes we can all become friends someday, for the sake of the child. I am at my wit's end. Part of me wants to break all links, relocate to another state, change my identity, and start again somewhere no one knows about this mess. But another part of me is so angry that I want to stay and fight, to show them how twisted the situation is. I do not know what to do. This betrayal has affected every aspect of my life. I cannot take being alone with my thoughts. I haven't even considered dating again because the thought of trusting someone like that scares me. I've also lost friends as a result of this. Those who believe I should take the high road and reconcile with my family, as if I'm the bad person for refusing to play happy families with the people who have caused me the most pain. The thought of Sarah and Mike raising a kid together, a child who should have been mine, is like a constant knife in my gut. I understand, cognitively, that the child is innocent in all of this. It's not the baby's fault that its parents are liars and cheaters. But I can't force myself to feel happy about its presence. My parents have begun to consider how I should participate in the child's life and how I will become an uncle. The thought makes me feel physically uncomfortable. How can I look at this child without seeing the ultimate emblem of my brother's betrayal? So, Reddit, my question is, am I an idiot for not forgiving my brother and ex-fiancé? Is it wrong to want to lose connections with my family over this? Any advice on how to proceed would be highly welcomed, as I feel as if I am drowning in a sea of deception and gaslighting. I apologize for this lengthy post. If you've made it this far, I really appreciate it. Writing it all out has been cathartic in a way. I'm not sure what I'm hoping to achieve by sharing this. Validation, wisdom, or simply the opportunity to scream into the void and have someone, anybody hear me. Edit. Oh my God, this blew up overnight. Thank you all for your assistance and advice. I'm astounded by the response, and it will take me some time to get through all of the comments. However, I wanted to answer a few typical queries. Yes, I have contacted a lawyer about obtaining a restraining order against my family. It is currently in progress. I do not intend to have any contact with the baby. It is not the child's fault, but I cannot become involved without losing my mind. For those who are curious about my work, I have already spoken with HR about the matter. They are aware and supportive. They've increased security at the front desk and given me the option of working from home more regularly. I am grateful for their understanding. Many of you have inquired whether I had contemplated moving to another city or state. It is definitely something I am thinking about. My company has offices in several other cities, so a transfer could be possible. I'm considering the advantages and cons. To those suggesting a DNA test, Sarah has admitted to the affair, and the timeline is congruent. I see no reason to believe the child is not Mike's. Even if it were my child, I doubt I could ever look at him without thinking about this treachery. The sheer number of people who have had comparable experiences has overwhelmed me. It's sad to understand how common this type of betrayal is, but it's also weirdly reassuring to know I am not alone. Thank you for sharing your stories. To the individual who inquired whether I had explored legal action against Mike for alienation of affection, I looked into it, but it is not recognized in my state. Even if it were, I doubt I have the energy for a judicial struggle right now. Several people have noted that Mike's behavior appears narcissistic. I've started reading about narcissistic personality disorder, and a lot of it rings true. It helps me comprehend, but it does not justify his conduct. Those inquiring about Sarah's relatives are as startled and outraged as one would imagine. They have stopped communicating with her and have reached out to offer me their support. It's a minor comfort, but I value it. To the person who inquired if I'd ever considered having my own children. To be honest, this entire experience has made me rethink if I even want a family. I'm trying not to make any big decisions while I analyze everything. I'll keep you posted if something big happens, but for now, my priority is to recuperate and move forward. Thanks again, Reddit. You have helped more people than you realize. Your support and recommendations have given me a lot to think about, and they've really been a lifeline during this difficult time. I may not be able to answer every remark, but please know that I read them all and they have helped me feel less alone. Update. Hello Reddit. It's been nearly 2 weeks since my previous post, and it has been a roller coaster. First and foremost, thank you for your invaluable assistance and guidance. I didn't anticipate my post to go viral. Reading through all of your answers has been upsetting and somehow reassuring. It's disturbing how regular this type of deception is. The past few weeks have been really hard. Remember how I mentioned that I was working on getting a restraining order? That became a tremendous ordeal. My lawyer had filed the papers, and we had a hearing planned. I assumed it would be simple given the proof and the constant harassment, but I was mistaken. My parents arrived to court with their own lawyer, a high-powered attorney dressed in an expensive suit who most likely costs more per hour than I do in a week. They attempted to portray me as the insane one, claiming I was ripping the family apart over a simple misunderstanding, as if Mike had stumbled and fell into my fiancé. Fortunately, the judge did not buy it. She issued the restraining order against Mike and my parents, but only after my mother sobbed in court and my father stared at me as if I had committed murder. Mike's reaction, however, I swear, if looks could kill, I wouldn't have left the courthouse alive. As we were leaving, Mike attempted to approach me, but my lawyer intervened, reminding him of the newly issued restraining order. Mike simply scoffed and stated, "This isn't over. You can't hide behind a piece of paper forever." I'd be lying if I said his remarks didn't make me uncomfortable, but at least I have some legal protection now. My job situation has also been a nightmare. Remember when I mentioned my family visiting my workplace? It all culminated last week. I was at a client meeting when my assistant alerted me to the fact that my mother was raising a disturbance in the foyer. Apparently, she had brought a photo album and was showing my coworkers baby images of Mike and me while crying about how close her boys used to be. When I arrived downstairs, I found her surrounded by several uneasy-looking colleagues. She was in the middle of telling a story about Mike and me bathing together when we were toddlers. When she recognized me, she attempted to approach me, babbling about organizing a baby shower. I cut her off, telling her she had to go immediately or I'd call the cops for trespassing and breaching the restraining order. Her expression looked as if I had smacked her, but after everything they had put me through, I couldn't care. Security let her out, and I spent the next hour coordinating with my boss and coworkers to minimize the damage. Most of them understood, but I could tell some were concerned about the drama I was bringing into the office. But it was the interaction with Mike that truly threw me off course. Last Saturday, I was in the gym, trying to let out my rage on the punching bag. I was so absorbed that I didn't realize someone was approaching until I heard his voice. I looked back, and there was Mike, smirking at me as if he hadn't just broken the restraining order. He began shouting loudly, making sure everyone nearby could hear. I ordered him to go before I contacted the cops, but he laughed and said he was going to tell them I had threatened him and Sarah. That's when I lost it. I struck at him, landing a punch squarely on his jaw. He stumbled back, then pounced at me. We ended up on the floor, trading blows like children again, but this time, there were no parents to separate us, no one instructing me to be the bigger person, and let Mike win. I managed to land a couple decent hits before the gym staff intervened. Mike's nose was bleeding, and I could feel my face swell. We were both shrieking, attempting to break free and go at each other again. The gym manager threatened to call the cops, which ultimately shook me out of it. I grabbed my belongings and fled. I was driving home, still shivering from the adrenaline rush, when I received a call from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I responded. Sarah was shouting at me about breaking Mike's nose and suggesting he would require surgery. I couldn't stop giggling. Sarah being unhappy with me after what they had done was plain ludicrous. I sarcastically apologized if I irritated her little boyfriend, whom she had been sleeping with behind my back for months. She started crying, moaning about how frightened she was, how the baby could feel her suffering, and how I was so selfish. I hung up and blocked her phone. The consequences of the brawl were serious. The news traveled quickly within our social circle. My phone was inundated with texts from friends and relatives, some of whom were supportive, while others chastised me for assaulting my poor, defenseless brother. Sarah's parents contacted me again, expressing their support for me as well as displeasure in their daughter. It was a minor consolation, but at this point, I'll take what I can. The restraining order does not seem enough anymore. Mike has already demonstrated his willingness to violate it, and I am truly afraid about what he may do next. The legal consequences have been a nightmare. My lawyer contacted me the day after the gym incident to inform me that Mike had filed assault charges against me. I described how Mike broke the restraining order and provoked me. My lawyer groaned and said we'd fight it, but it might be a tough struggle because I threw the first punch. We are in the process of filing charges against Mike for breaking the restraining order. My lawyer believes that this will strengthen our case, but nothing is assured. I've had to give police statements, show them my facial and knuckle injuries, and explain why I was defending myself against my own brother. The entire process is humiliating. To make matters worse, Mike and I have been permanently barred from the gym. While I don't blame them, it's terrible because the gym was one of the only locations where I could express my anger in a healthy manner. My cousin Amy, with whom I've always been close, called me lately, She's been under a lot of pressure from her family to support me, but she's standing firm. She explained what had been going on behind the scenes. Apparently, my parents have been telling everyone that I'm having a mental breakdown. They claim that Sarah and Mike's relationship began after Sarah and I split up, and that I'm simply envious and unwilling to move on. According to Amy, the majority of the family is suspicious, but some are buying into the story. It's infuriating to know they're spreading lies about me while I'm still trying to recuperate. Work has been difficult, to say the least. After the event with my mother generating a disturbance in the lobby and the argument with Mike becoming viral on local social media, I can see my coworkers are nervous around me. Earlier this week, my manager summoned me to his office. He began by saying he regarded me as an employee and recognized that I was going through a difficult time. Then he dropped the bombshell. He proposed that I take a leave of absence until things settled down. He referred to it as a personal sabbatical, paid, of course, but it was evident that the decision had been taken. I wanted to fight, tell him that work was the only thing keeping me sane right now, but I knew it would be fruitless. I agreed, thanked him for his understanding, and began to pack up my office. As I was leaving, I overheard two coworkers whispering about how my brother got my fiancée pregnant. I slammed my office door louder than required as I walked out, taking some tiny joy in seeing them jump. I would be lying if I said none of this bothered me. I've begun taking long trips at night just to get out of my flat. Sometimes I find myself parked outside my old house, the one I shared with Sarah, wondering how my life became so messed up. In the midst of all this commotion, I found comfort from an unexpected source. Sarah's younger sister Emma. She messaged me on social media, apologizing for her sister's actions and offering her support. At first, I was skeptical. What if it was all a trick? But after speaking with her, I understood she was equally outraged by Sarah's acts as I was. Emma has kept me informed about Sarah and Mike's lives. They appear to have moved in together, living as if they did not wreck several lives in order to be together. Emma claims Sarah is attempting to portray herself as the victim, crying to anybody who will listen about how she never meant to hurt anyone, and that she and Mike are soulmates who found each other against all odds. It makes me sick to my stomach, but I appreciate Emma keeping me updated. After all, information is power, even if it is knowledge that I would rather not have. The social media impact has been a nightmare. I've always been a quiet person, but this event has thrust me into an unwelcome limelight. Someone, most likely one of Mike's friends, posted about our feud on a local Facebook page. The post did not identify our names, but it recounted the situation in enough detail that anyone who knows us might figure it out. The comments section became a battleground. Some individuals defended me, claiming Mike received what he deserved. Others classified me as unstable and said I ought to be locked away. I made a terrible mistake by reading some of the comments one night after too many beers. I threw my phone across the room so forcefully that the screen cracked. Since then, I've deleted the majority of my social media profiles. I can't handle the continuous notifications and messages from people I haven't spoken to in years, all of whom suddenly want to know the juicy details of my personal life. With everything that has happened, I have realized that I cannot stay in this city any longer. There are too many memories and opportunities to run into Sarah, Mike, or my parents. I've started looking into internal transfers at my company, and there's a promising opportunity in our Seattle office. It's not ideal, I've never liked the continual rain, but at this point, I'd go to the moon to get away from all of this upheaval. I haven't made any final decisions yet, but the prospect of a new beginning is growing more appealing. A new city, a new apartment, and a new life where no one recognizes me as the person whose brother cheated on his fiancée. My parents have remained abnormally silent since the restraining order was imposed. I'm simply waiting for the other shoe to drop, for them to find a new method to force their way back into my life. Meanwhile, Sarah has been spreading the word about her pregnancy far and wide. Emma tells me she's been posting continuous updates on social media, including ultrasound photographs, belly shots, and messages about how blessed she and Mike are and how thrilled they are to start their family. Each new update feels like a fresh wound, triggering the pain just as I thought I was beginning to recover. So that is where things stand. 2 weeks ago, I believed my life couldn't get any worse, yet it has. I am still angry and wounded, but also exhausted. I am tired of justifying myself. Reddit, I suppose this is less of an update and more of a cry into the void. I'm not sure what I'm asking for anymore, advice, pity, or perhaps a time machine to prevent me from ever introducing Sarah to my brother. Whatever happens next, I will attempt to keep you all updated. Your encouragement meant more to me than you understand. It's comforting to be reminded that there are still good individuals in the world, even when everything appears to be full of betrayal and deception. Hello, Reddit. It's been a week since my last update, and I'm here with what I hope to be my final post about this calamity. First and foremost, I'd like to thank everyone for their assistance and advice along this journey. Your messages have been a lifeline at the darkest days in my life. A lot has happened in just 7 days, and I'm still trying to digest everything. I guess I'll start with the major news. I'm moving. Yes, I took the risk and accepted a transfer to our Seattle location. It wasn't an easy decision, but with everything that had transpired, I realized I needed a new beginning. The choice came following a particularly difficult day last week. I had just returned from another meeting with my lawyer over Mike's assault allegations when I noticed a message in my mailbox. It came from Sarah. I nearly threw it out, but curiosity got the best of me. Inside, there was an ultrasound photo and a handwritten letter expressing her and Mike's joy over their baby. She said she hoped I could find it in my heart to be pleased for them and that their child would be overjoyed to have me as an uncle. I saw red. Before I knew it, I had cleared Sarah's phone number and contacted her. She picked up on the second ring, so I let loose. I told her precisely how I felt about her, Mike, and their beautiful little family. I told her she was insane if she thought I'd ever want anything to do with that child, and that she, Mike, and the baby could all go to hell. It wasn't my best moment, but it felt liberating to finally express all I'd been keeping back. That night, I realized I couldn't live in this city any longer. I called my supervisor and informed him that I wanted to relocate to Seattle. To my surprise, he appeared relieved, probably concerned about how all of this drama would reflect on the organization. He promised to expedite the papers, and by the next morning, it was official. I had 2 weeks to collect my belongings and relocate across the nation. My family and social circle were quick to learn about my move. Unsurprisingly, my folks were furious. They turned up uninvited to my flat, defying the restraining order once more, to try to persuade me not to go. My mother cried, accusing me of abandoning the family, while my father raged at me for being selfish and immature. I didn't participate. I contacted the police and had them removed for breaking the injunction. My mother shouted as they were let out, telling me that I would regret it, that family is everything, and that I was wasting it. I slammed the door and returned to packing. Mike did not contact me directly, likely due to ongoing legal issues, but he did write a lengthy statement on social media. He talked about how some people can't handle seeing others happy, and how he and Sarah were rising above the hate to focus on their new family unit. It was plainly directed at me. I'll admit it hurt to see how many people liked and commented on his behalf, but I told myself that their opinions are meaningless because they don't know the truth. Sarah's remark was the most unexpected. Following our phone talk, she confided in her sister Emma, who has been keeping me updated on their condition. Emma informed me Sarah had a breakdown, stating she knew what she and Mike had done was wrong and was frightened of the future. My cousin Amy, bless her, offered to help me pack. While we worked, she told me more about what was going on in her family. Apparently, my aunt, my mother's sister, had a furious dispute with my mother. She accused her of consistently preferring Mike and pushing me away. She even informed my parents that they were reaping the repercussions of their years of favoritism. I won't lie, it felt good to hear that someone in the family was finally calling them out. My lawyer promised me that my move would have no effect on the pending legal dispute. We're still pursuing charges against Mike for breaking the restraining order, and we're fighting the assault allegations he made against me. My lawyer feels certain that the judge will see through Mike's lies, especially given his history of violating the injunction. Moving across the nation may potentially help our case, as it demonstrates that I am not a threat to Mike and have no intention of dealing with him. I'm not sure if I will post another update after this. Part of starting over is leaving the past behind, and as helpful as this group has been, I believe it is time for me to move on from this sad chapter. I need to focus on creating a new life rather than obsessing on the past. So, I guess this is it. Wish me luck, Reddit. I have a whole new life ahead of me in Seattle, and I plan to make the most of it. Thank you for staying with me throughout this. Your help has been tremendous, and it's reassuring to know that there are still good people out there, even in a world filled with betrayal and deception. My sister fell into addiction and abandoned her child. I chose to adopt my nephew despite family judgment. I, a 28 female, work as a product manager for a software firm, primarily remotely. I've created a life that I'm actually satisfied with. I've never desired children, and it's become a source of contention with my family. If you were at our annual family reunion last weekend, you'd think I was a bad guy for not having children or devoting my life to chasing them. Family reunions are meant to be enjoyable, right? A time to gather up with family, eat too much food, and perhaps giggle at embarrassing childhood memories. Well, mine was more of an endurance test. The tension was palpable from the moment I walked into the house, the covert glances exchanged between aunts, the overly broad smiles, and the loaded questions. Everything was there. I had hardly hung up my coat when the first jab was delivered. "You're still single, huh?" My cousin Patricia, 35F, spoke loudly enough for the entire room to hear. Patricia, who has 3 children and always writes about them on social media, was holding court in the kitchen, displaying her youngest's most recent school photos. "Must be good to have so much free time. What are you even doing with yourself?" I smiled nicely and shrugged it off, because what is the point of participating? But it did not end there. Another relative joined in, discussing how their lives truly began after having children. Then someone else inquired, "Have you ever considered adoption? I mean, it's not too late, but it's more difficult as you get older." It was as if they had planned this routine, an organized ambush aimed to make me feel insignificant. They said it all with faux sweetness, as if they were attempting to assist, but the verdict was as apparent as the lemonade on the table. Even my mother joined in, quietly saying that I was wasting my prime years and that every woman should experience the joy of parenthood. My father nodded in agreement, adding that they would have liked to have more grandchildren. I tried to divert by highlighting my work accomplishments and hobbies, but it didn't help. My accomplishments were never taken seriously here. They only valued diapers, report cards, and family Christmas photos. At some time, the conversation turned to my younger sister Lauren. Growing up, she was the golden child, beautiful, charming, and always the center of attention. Lauren was in the spotlight whenever there was one. But everything changed when she got pregnant at 21, dropped out of college, and became associated with the wrong crowd. Addiction followed, as did a series of poor decisions. She eventually withdrew from our lives completely. I last saw her years ago, during a court-mandated family therapy session that concluded with her storming out. Nobody had heard from her since. When Lauren's name came up, the room became quieter. It was as if everyone agreed not to linger on it for too long. My aunt casually added that Lauren's son, Jake, was now in foster care. She spoke it as if she were discussing the weather, detached, easygoing, and without passion. I froze for a while, trying to digest what I'd just heard. Jake, I had never met him, but I knew he was around 10 years old. He was living with Lauren and one of her boyfriends when I last heard from him. Apparently, that did not last. "What do you mean, he's in foster care?" I asked. My aunt shrugged. "You know how Lauren is. Her decisions caught up with her. Poor kid, what can you do?" I looked around the room, hoping for someone to say something, anything, but they all continued their talks. It was as if Jake did not exist. I pressed my parents about it, but they dismissed me. "You wouldn't understand," my mother replied. "It's not that simple." The remainder of the evening was a blur. I couldn't stop thinking about Jake, a 10-year-old youngster abandoned by his mother and rejected by those who should have cared for him. And here they were, lecturing me on duty and family values. When I came home that night, I couldn't put it down. I started exploring, attempting to learn everything I could about Jake. It didn't take long to get some information. He'd been in the system for a while, moving between families. The more I read, the angrier I became. How? How could my family simply pretend he did not exist? How could they sit around judging me and ignore a youngster in need? The next morning, I called a social worker and inquired about Jake's status. It was not a decision I took lightly. I knew it would be complex and messy, but I couldn't bear the thought of him being forgotten. If my family does not stand up, perhaps I can. This was not about demonstrating something to anyone. It wasn't about deflecting their criticism or making myself feel better. It was about Jake, a child who deserved better than the hand he was dealt. I wasn't about to let him fall between the gaps. I spent the next day making calls and figuring out how to meet Jake. The social worker I spoke with informed me that Jake had been in foster care for several years. He'd been transferred between families and, reportedly, had behavioral issues. When I inquired what that meant, she referenced difficulty adjusting, acting out, and suffering at school. It did not surprise me. How could a child go through what he did without having some scars? The social worker was wary about allowing me to visit him. She said that Jake had trust issues, and that meeting new people could be intimidating for him. But, upon learning that I was a family member, albeit a minor blip in Jake's life, she consented to arrange a supervised visit. She advised me to control my expectations. A week later, I arrived at the foster care center for the meeting. My palms were moist, and I was constantly adjusting my backpack strap. I didn't know what I was getting into. The social worker brought me into a small room with mismatched furnishings and colorful peeling paint. Jake sat at a table and drew on a sheet of paper. His hair was scruffy, and he appeared considerably smaller than I had imagined for a 10-year-old. He didn't look up as I stepped in. I sat across from him, unsure what to say. The social worker introduced me as his aunt. Jake returned his attention to his sketch after a fleeting peek at me. His shoulders were slumped, and he held the pencil hard. I did not want to push him, so I simply commented on his drawing. He was drawing a robot, detailed and exact. When I complimented it, he murmured, "Thanks," but continued working. The initial meeting was quiet and unpleasant, but I felt an attraction to him that I couldn't explain. He didn't trust me. Why would he? But I knew I wanted to return. When I told my family about the visit, it went about as well as one would imagine. My mother rolled her eyes and told me I was overly theatrical. My father scoffed and said I was playing hero. My cousins laughed and joked about how much I would regret it. It stung, but that didn't matter. I was not doing this for them. I returned to see Jake several times during the next 2 weeks. He was always guarded, but he began to open up. I took him a sketchbook on one of our visits, and his face lit up for the first time. He adored drawing robots, spaceships, and superheroes. He was also skilled at it. When I asked him about his favorite movies, he ran off a litany of animated films. I made a mental note to watch them later so I would have something to discuss with him. He gradually began to share small aspects of his life. He told me about his mother, how she used to sing to him when he was younger, how she smelled like strawberries, and how she stopped coming up when he needed her the most. It was painful to hear, yet I did not intervene. I let him speak. I had no illusions about how difficult the adoption process would be when I decided to begin. The paperwork alone was daunting, and the system was designed to filter out anyone who wasn't completely dedicated. Some of my friends were supportive, while others raised eyebrows. They reminded me that Jake arrived with baggage, and asked if I was prepared for the responsibilities. It did not change my mind, but it made me reflect on how unprepared I felt. My folks were furious when they found out. They accused me of insulting the family and heaping further humiliation on them. My mother even accused me of stealing Lauren's child, which was ludicrous given how they had wiped their hands of him. After one too many arguments, I stopped returning their calls. Fortunately, not everyone was against me. I had a handful of close friends help me set up Jake's room. We painted the walls a gentle blue, installed shelving for his sketchbooks, and added a little desk where he could draw. I wanted him to feel like he had his own space, even if he wasn't living with me yet. During one visit, Jake told me that he had been bullied in foster care. The other kids taunted him for not having a real family. I could see how much that affected him, even though he tried not to show it. I promised myself I'd modify it. He deserved to feel protected and wanted. The process stalled when the agency requested family references. My parents refused to vouch for me, claiming I was unfit to raise a child. It felt like a hit in the belly, but I didn't let that stop me. I discovered coworkers and friends who were more than happy to support me. Update. The custody court is planned for next month, so I've been preparing in my spare time. The social worker cautioned me that these hearings may be intense. They examine every element of your life to see whether you are suitable to be a parent. My remote work position turned out to be a benefit. They appreciated that I had a flexible schedule to fulfill Jake's requirements. Jake stayed with me for the first time overnight yesterday. I was nervous, maybe more than he was. I had packed the fridge with snacks that I thought kids would enjoy and purchased extra blankets in case he became cold. He arrived carrying his sketchbook, which seemed to be his security blanket. We attempted making pancakes for dinner because he remarked he'd never done it before. It was a total disaster. The batter got everywhere, on the ceiling, don't ask, on our shirts, and somehow in my hair. But then something incredible occurred. Jake laughed, not a polite chuckle, but a true gut laugh. It was the first time I'd heard him actually laugh, and it made the entire disaster worthwhile. Later that night, while I was tucking him in, an entirely new experience for me, he asked if he might hang glow-in-the-dark stars from the ceiling. In case I stay again, he explained quietly. My heart almost burst. After he went to sleep, I sat in the living room and cried. Happy tears? Overwhelmed tears? Fearful tears, all at once. The most unusual element has been adjusting to video conversations with my team while having indications of kid life in the background. During today's morning stand-up, my supervisor discovered a half-finished robot drawing pinned to my wall. When I told her about Jake, her entire face brightened up. It turns out her child is also interested in robots. She offered to link Jake to some online art programs. My cousin Patricia has been circulating tales in the family group chat about how I'm not mother material, and that this is simply one of my phases. I exited the discussion. Anna, another relative I've never been very close to, shocked me with a private message. She expressed her admiration for what I was doing and offered to help. She has taught art to children of Jake's age before. The social worker came by today to check on Jake's room setting. She saw that the art materials were organized by type and color, Jake's system, not mine, and commented on how he's already personalizing the area. She also added that his current foster home said he's been more involved and communicative since our visits began. Last night, Jake showed me a drawing he had been working on. It was unlike his typical robots and spacecraft. This one featured two folks sitting at a table eating pancakes. "That's us," he remarked, before abruptly changing the subject. I had to excuse myself to the bathroom so he wouldn't see me cry again. The most difficult thing has been dealing with my parents' silence. They have not spoken to me since I legally began the adoption process. Dad did pass by my house once. I noticed his automobile slowing down, but he did not stop. Mom blocked me on Facebook after I shared a photo of Jake's painting desk. Their rejection hurts, but seeing Jake slowly emerge from his shell reminds me why I'm doing this. Tomorrow, we have another meeting with the adoption counselor. Jake requested if he might bring his sketchbook and show her his progress. The counselor believes art therapy could be useful for him, and I agree. For the time being, I'm taking things slowly, attempting to build trust and stability. Some days are more difficult than others, yet they all feel right in some way. Update number 2. The home inspection was more thorough than I anticipated. Last week, the social worker called to plan it, and everything in my flat seemed inadequate. I spent days childproofing corners, changing furniture, and triple-checking every possible safety concern. I also reconfigured all of my business cords to avoid tripping. During the inspection, she spotted Jake's artwork conspicuously displayed in what was once my home office and is now his art room. She paused briefly in front of his most recent work, a realistic picture of a futuristic city. She smiled and remarked, "He's going to feel at home here." Those words had a different impact than any family acceptance could. The financial hardship has been real, however. My savings have been depleted due to legal bills, home improvements, and preparing Jake's place. I canceled my gym membership and began meal preparation instead of buying takeout. Every spare dime goes towards making this happen. My startup's HR department astonished me by giving adoption aid benefits. I had no idea we had them. Then came the shocking news. My parents had filed a legal objection to the adoption. They wrote a letter to the court, stating I'm mentally unstable and using Jake to prove a point. The claims were ludicrous. They dubbed me a workaholic who can't even take care of a plant. I had to engage a lawyer to refute their accusations. Anna really stepped up. She submitted a compelling letter to the court praising my character and dedication to Jacob. She also recounted how the family had previously failed him, which allegedly caused a disturbance at the last family gathering. I was not invited. Jake has been asking questions regarding the process. Yesterday, he asked whether he could keep his last name or if he had to take mine. The idea that he's thinking about these details causes my heart to accelerate. I told him it was his decision. He nodded and returned to drawing, but I could tell he was processing it. The court date is scheduled for next month. My lawyer believes we have a good case, especially because none of my family members who opposed the adoption attempted to help Jake themselves. Still, the wait is nerve-wracking. Jake picks up on my nervousness, so I've been trying to keep optimistic around him. On a more positive note, his art instructor contacted me about entering one of his pieces in a school exhibition. Jake was hesitant at first, but after I showed him some famous robot art online, he became enthusiastic about the concept. It would be his first time displaying his work in public. I have to remember that, despite all of the legal battles and family drama, this is about providing Jake with stability and love. Sometimes, when I watch him engrossed in his art, finally feeling safe enough to create freely, I know deep down that this is right. Update 3. Life with Jake has settled into a new normal, albeit not without its problems. The most difficult part has been establishing routines, which his prior foster families struggled with. We worked together to design a weekly timetable that includes plenty of time for art. Getting him up for school remains a daily battle. Who knew 10-year-olds could be so clever in their excuses? But we are making progress. The school situation has been difficult. Jake's teacher called me in for a meeting last week. His math and science grades could be improved, but that wasn't her main concern. She noted that he becomes exceedingly anxious during parent-teacher conferences or when other students discuss their families. During the latest family tree project, he shut down and refused to cooperate. I've been working with Jake's school counselor to assist him handle these situations. We're working on alternate projects that honor diverse types of families. His art instructor has been especially helpful, allowing him to stay in the art room during lunchtime when he requires a peaceful environment. She describes his technical abilities as excellent for his age, particularly his perspective sketching. The custody hearing last week was very stressful. I was unprepared for how personal the inquiries would become. They inquired about everything from my work schedule to my personal life, hoping to evaluate whether I could create a stable environment. When they questioned my decision to adopt as a single parent, I held firm. I mentioned how my remote work flexibility allows me to spend more time with Jake than in many traditional family situations. In terms of work, my staff has been remarkably understanding. During a recent video call, Jake broke down in the background because he couldn't find his favorite sketching pencil. Instead of becoming annoyed, my coworkers shared their own parenting disaster experiences. Following that, one person sent Jake a professional art supply kit. Mrs. Thompson, my neighbor, provided the biggest surprise. She's been teaching art at the local community center for 30 years and offered Jake private lessons. He was first cautious about working with someone new, but when he saw her studio, which was filled with sculptures and paintings, his eyes lit up. It has now become a weekly routine. Last night, we had our first significant breakthrough. Jake was working on a new drawing, darker than his typical work. When I inquired, he finally opened up about his time in the system. He talked about feeling like he was always moving, and how he stopped unpacking his bags at new places because he knew he wouldn't remain long. He handed me a little sketchbook he had hidden, packed with drawings of the many rooms he had slept in. Some postings occurred just a few days apart. The conversation was difficult, but important. We ended up sitting on the floor of his art room till late, looking at his drawings and telling me stories about each location. Some made him giggle, while others made him quiet. When he came to the drawing of his present room, I saw it was more detailed than the others. I like drawing this one, he told me, because I'm not scared to remember it. We are still working on his trust difficulties. He occasionally hoards food in his room, a behavior he developed during more unstable times. Instead of confronting him about it, I purchased a little refrigerator and assisted him in organizing his snack hoard. Small steps, but they matter. The familial drama continues to emerge. My aunt sent me a passive-aggressive email about real parenting and how I'm playing house. I didn't react, but Jake overheard me discussing it. This morning, I discovered a drawing on my desk depicting a superhero version of myself blocking lightning bolts with an art shield. It made me laugh and cry simultaneously. Update 4, Lauren showed up to my door uninvited yesterday. I hadn't seen her in 3 years and scarcely recognized her. She requested to see Jake, stating that she had gotten clean and was ready to be a mother again. When I explained that unexpected visits were not permitted under our current arrangement, she became hostile, accusing me of taking her son. The confrontation turned ugly. Lauren began screaming about her maternal rights, which drew the attention of neighbors. Mrs. Thompson, bless her, just happened to be walking by. She hurriedly whisked Jake, who was happily in his art room with headphones on, into her house before he could see anything. Lauren refused to go, so I had to contact the cops. After they escorted her away, I discovered she had also been bothering my parents, demanding they fix this. It appears she has been sleeping at a halfway home downtown. My mother called for the first time in months, not to encourage me, but to recommend that I consider Lauren's feelings. I hung up. Jake's therapist planned an emergency session following the incident. We've been working through his feelings around Lauren's reappearance. He's puzzled, angry, and mostly afraid. He asked me if he needed to go back to her. When I assured him that he didn't, he showed me a drawing he'd been working on, a fortress with numerous locks and security systems. The symbolism was not subtle. My counsel has been wonderful throughout this. She assisted me in filing a restraining order against Lauren and is currently attempting to limit any future contact to monitored visits only. The court seemed sympathetic, particularly after Lauren's outburst at my house. The family has separated into two factions. Most people still agree with Lauren, alleging that I am depriving a mother of her kid. But a few people, including Anna and, surprise, one of my older uncles, have begun to come up about Lauren's history of desertion. The family group chat has devolved into a battle zone. Jake's art teacher suggested submitting his fortress artwork to a child art competition centered on emotional expression. She sees it as an outlet for him to express his emotions via art. Jake agreed, but asked that the drawing be modified first. He put a figure to the top of the fortress, someone maintaining watch. When I asked about it, he simply replied, "That's you." Work has been my refuge through it all. My staff has been extremely accommodating, allowing me to adapt my schedule as needed for legal meetings and treatment visits. My manager even connected me to another colleague who had gone through a similar adoption process. Their guidance has proven useful. Jake and Lauren had their first supervised video call today. It was brief and awkward. He showed her some of his most recent artwork, but her attempts to reminisce about their time together just made him withdraw. Later, he spent hours in his art room creating robot armies. The therapist claims that this is his way of protecting himself. I've begun chronicling everything, every interaction with Lauren, every family message, and every event. My lawyer believes it's critical for retaining custody. It can feel weird at times to keep track of my own family's attempts to undermine Jake's stability. The most difficult thing is watching Jake battle with conflicting loyalties. He shouldn't have to deal with this much intricacy at his age. But yesterday, when he asked whether he could start calling me mom, I learned that family can be established in the midst of chaos. Update 5. Jake's art teacher entered one of his works into a regional competition without notifying him. He won first place. When she mentioned it in class, the other students applauded. The tournament organizers intended to highlight his work in a special assembly and give him an award. Jake was scared to speak in front of everyone, but he was determined to do it. The morning of the assembly, he donned the button-up shirt we had chosen jointly, fidgeting with its sleeves. When they announced his name, he approached the podium, clutching his latest sketchbook. His voice shook at first, but it strengthened as he spoke. Art allows me to say things that I cannot say aloud. It makes me feel less alone. The scene was ideal, until Lauren emerged in the back of the auditorium. I saw her first. She appeared unstable and disturbed. Before I could intercede, she began making her way to the platform, calling Jake's name. The school security responded immediately, but not before she yelled allegations about me wrecking their family. Jake froze on stage, his words forgotten. I approached him just as his art instructor was taking him away from the pandemonium. Later, in the stillness of his art room, he worked discreetly on a new piece. A dark, swirling composition that revealed much about his emotional state. That incident was the final straw. Lauren's behavior at school served as evidence in the subsequent emergency court session to get a permanent restraining order. The judge also granted my request to limit her interaction to written communication, which would be reviewed by Jake's therapist. My parents' reactions were predictable. They bombarded social media with posts about how I'd manipulated the system and stolen Jake from his real family, but their campaign failed spectacularly when Anna intervened. She shared a thorough narrative of how the family had ignored Jake's demands for years, including screenshots of earlier messages dismissing his predicament. The truth quickly spread throughout our neighborhood. Other parents at Jake's school began sharing anecdotes about how he had helped their children feel more confidence in their own artwork. His art teacher documented his improvement and the great impact he made on other children. Even my company's CEO, who had met Jake during our virtual Bring Your Kid to Work day, sent a public statement of support. We conducted an art display in our backyard yesterday, which was Jake's idea. He invited his pals from school, neighbors, and even some of his former foster brothers. The theme was building new worlds, which is his specialty. As guests passed through the improvised gallery, I noticed Jake confidently explaining his artwork, which would have been inconceivable a year ago. Mrs. Thompson assisted him in organizing the pieces chronologically, beginning with his early robot sketches and progressing to his most recent works. The development was striking. From hard, mechanical forms to more fluid, emotional compositions. His most recent drawing, which was prominently displayed, depicted a group of people making something together. "It's about choosing your family," he told the tourists. My parents drove past during the show but did not stop. "It does not hurt anymore. We've created something stronger than their judgment, a family defined by choice rather than obligation." Jake's most recent school report demonstrates development in all subjects, and his art portfolio has been accepted into a prominent summer program. The fortress drawing that created so much turmoil is now displayed in our living room. Jake recently added windows, gardens, and open gates. "It's still strong," he explained. "But it's also a home." Tonight, as I went through congratulatory notes from the art show, Jake glanced up and stated, "I never have to pack up my art supplies anymore." It wasn't only about the goods. We both knew it. It was about finding a sense of belonging and establishing roots. Our family may not look like what my parents had envisioned, but it is real in our own. Every drawing on our walls represents a piece of our story. I was always ignored and undervalued by my parents. After my divorce, they exploited me financially and treated my son as a burden. I, 42F, work as an emergency room physician at a large Boston hospital. I am a single mother with a 7-year-old boy named Lucas. Today, I need to express something that has been bothering me for decades concerning my family dynamics, specifically my parents' behavior and its impact on my life. When I was 5 years old, my sister Abigail was born. Our parents told me that I was going to be a big sister and that it would be fantastic to have a lifelong buddy. They didn't mention that I had become invisible in our household. Every morning, Mom would prepare Abigail's breakfast to order. 2 eggs sunny side up, toast cut diagonally, just how my princess likes it, while tossing me a box of cereal without looking at me. The contrasts were evident throughout our daily lives. In elementary school, Mom would spend hours assisting Abigail with her schoolwork, gently explaining each problem. When I sought assistance, the reaction was always the same. "You're smart enough to figure it out for yourself." They'd come to all of Abigail's soccer games, cheering from the sidelines, but they always had previous engagements when I had science competitions. When I required braces, Dad moaned about the price for months. Every dentist appointment was accompanied by sighs and murmured remarks about expenses. 2 years later, when Abigail required braces as well, money became irrelevant. They even got her the beautiful clear ones I had requested but was rejected. "They're an investment in her confidence," Mom told her book club pals, as if my confidence wasn't important. My academic achievements were regarded with indifference. Straight A's in advanced science classes elicited distracted nods, yet Abigail's B+ in normal math prompted a joyful supper at her favorite downtown restaurant. During parent-teacher conferences, they hardly listened when my teachers commended my outstanding achievement in biology and chemistry, but smiled with pride when Abigail's teachers emphasized her engagement in class discussions. Birthday celebrations became a sharp reminder of our differing standing within the family. My parties were basic affairs, supermarket cake and a few pals in the backyard, if I was lucky enough to have one at all. Abigail's celebrations were full-fledged events, complete with bouncy houses, hired entertainers, custom-made cakes, and intricate theme decorations. One year, they even engaged a professional event planner. I once overheard Mom telling a friend, "Well, Abigail just appreciates these things more. Our older one is too practical." The remarks hurt, but I learned to ignore them. The toughest part was watching Abigail transform from a wonderful child to someone I scarcely recognized. In our childhood, we used to make blanket forts and make up funny stories about fantastic adventures. However, years of being treated as if she could do no wrong took its toll. By middle school, she had become exactly what you would anticipate. "Where's my blue sweater?" she'd ask, ransacking my closet without permission. "That's mine, Abigail. Mom bought it for my birthday." "Well, I need it for Jessica's party," she would explain. "Don't be selfish, let your sister borrow it," Mom would often say. My items became communal property, but I was not allowed to touch anything Abigail owned. I learned to pick my battles, expect nothing, and seek validation elsewhere. School became my refuge. While Abigail was being praised for her role in the school play, she had 2 lines. I was quietly winning science fairs and devising my escape plan. I participated in every academic club conceivable, volunteered at the local hospital, and spent my summers conducting research internships. My guidance counselor became my best champion, assisting me in applying for scholarships and providing wonderful recommendations. I shivered with excitement when my acceptance letter to Harvard Medical School arrived, along with a full scholarship. Finally, I figured, they'd have to recognize my accomplishments. I waited till dinner to ensure everyone was present. Instead of celebrating, Abigail dominated the evening with a dramatic reenactment of her 7th grade student council election campaign. "I got a full scholarship to Harvard Medical School," I said during a rare pause. "That is nice, honey." My mother responded, "Abigail, sweetie, tell us more about your campaign posters." Medical school became my haven. During those early years, I only returned home for important holidays, and even then, I counted the minutes until I could escape. Every visit was the same. Abigail's accomplishments were highlighted, while my dean's list standings and prominent internship offers received little attention. I poured myself into my studies, succeeding at emergency medicine rotations and receiving wonderful referrals from renowned doctors. In my 3rd year, I began an emergency medicine rotation at Massachusetts General Hospital. That is where I met Marcus. Marcus was a medical device sales agent, showcasing new trauma equipment to the department. Despite my normal cautious approach to relationships, something just snapped between us. He was unlike anyone I'd dated before, genuinely engaged in my work, supportive of my career goals, and seemingly unconcerned by my ambitions. After graduation, we got married in a simple ceremony. I got a job in the ER at Mass General, and everything felt fantastic. When our son Lucas was born, Marcus appeared to be the adoring father I had hoped for. We bought a house in a good school area, established a lovely nursery, and I felt I'd finally found the family life I'd always desired. But something changed once Lucas turned 1. Marcus became aloof, started working late, and canceled our date nights. Initially, I ascribed it to the difficulties of new fatherhood and my rigorous job as an ER physician. I suggested couples counseling, date nights, and even a trip, But he always found an excuse. Deep down, I sensed something was wrong, but I wasn't expecting what happened next. The confession happened on a routine Tuesday evening. I was feeding Lucas in his high chair when Marcus strolled in, looking as if he hadn't slept in days. "I need to tell you something," he explained, his voice quivering. "I have met someone else. Her name is Catherine. She is a patient's family member, and I am in love with her." My world collapsed in that moment, but years of emotional suppression had trained me to remain calm. The divorce was unexpectedly cordial. Marcus went to Colorado with Catherine, but he insisted on paying substantial alimony and child support. "I may be a terrible husband," he observed at our most recent meeting, "but I won't be a terrible father." True to his word, he has stayed active in Lucas's life through regular video conversations and holiday visits. Marcus's family became an unexpected source of support after the divorce. Regardless of what happened to their son, Tom and Betty remained dedicated grandparents to Lucas, and their daughter Avery became the aunt my sister never was. Every time we visited their house, Lucas would light up and run right to the toy zone they had put up exclusively for him. Tom would get down on the floor and play with trucks, while Avery always had a new game or craft project planned. My own parents' home was a very different scenario. I tried to see them on occasion, hoping they'd want to bond with their only granddaughter, but their apathy was heartbreaking to witness. "Don't let him touch that vase," Mom would say, scarcely looking up from her magazine. "And make sure he doesn't run around too much, he'll scratch the hardwood floors." Lucas would cling to my leg, sensing the frigid air. The contrast grew much more striking when Abigail showed up during our visits. "Here's my successful girl," Dad would beam as Abigail walked in, talking about her new job at a trading company. They'd completely disregard Lucas's attempts to show them his latest drawing, instead focusing on Abigail's every word about workplace politics and client meetings. I'll provide updates shortly regarding recent occurrences that have made me reconsider everything about my relationship with my parents. It's still fresh, and I need time to comprehend everything. For the time being, my emphasis is on my son and the family members who have demonstrated the true meaning of unconditional love. Update number 1. Thank you all for your encouraging words. I've gathered my ideas and wanted to discuss how things changed following the divorce, especially my career and my parents' behavior. After Marcus left, I put myself into my job at the ER. I began working on the most difficult cases, those that other doctors generally avoided. Last year, there was one exceptionally tough case, a patient with many traumas and a convoluted medical history. 3 previous hospitals had transferred him because they deemed him too risky. I spent 16 hours stabilizing him and collaborating with many doctors, and he came through. That instance piqued the department head's interest. "Dr. Mitchell," he called me into his office one morning, "I've been following your performance. How do you feel about leading our new trauma response team?" It meant increased responsibility, longer hours, and a significant wage boost. I agreed without hesitation. The team's success rate under my guidance much exceeded expectations. We decreased critical response times by 30% and had the highest survival rate in the hospital's history. My research papers on emergency trauma protocols have been published in top medical publications. Then followed the promotion to senior attending physician, complete with a corner office and a salary that made my eyes wet. With my newfound financial stability, I purchased a lovely 3-bedroom apartment in an excellent school area. Lucas was pleased to have his own room. "Mom, can I paint the walls blue? Like the ocean?" he inquired, his eyes gleaming. "Of course, sweetheart," I said, "we can do whatever you want." That weekend, Tom and Avery helped us paint, making it a family project. Betty brought baked cookies, and we ended up getting more paint on ourselves than on the walls. This was the point at which my parents' relationship began to change. It started with casual questions about my new lifestyle. Mom began phoning more frequently, asking about Lucas and arranging weekend trips. Initially, I was cautiously optimistic. Perhaps they'd want to be true grandparents to Lucas. The initial visit appeared promising. Mom actually got down on the floor to play with Lucas' train set, which I had never seen her do before. Dad even got him a new toy truck. But then the requests began to arrive, initially in tiny numbers. "The refrigerator is making strange noises. The bathroom needs some repairs." Each time, they'd say how tight their finances were and how they couldn't possibly afford it alone. I agreed to help, remembering all of Abigail's dance classes and summer camps that they had paid for but had denied me. Each request was followed by brief intervals of focused attention on Lucas. They'd invite us to dinner, inquire about his school, and express interest in his life. But it didn't last long. Meanwhile, Lucas was excelling at his new school. His teacher informed me, "He's exceptionally bright, particularly in science, just like his mom." Avery was beaming at the parent-teacher conference she and I went together. My folks, however, were too preoccupied that day. Every Wednesday, Avery gets him up from school and takes him to science club, which she began doing after observing his interest in my medical books. Tom and Betty have been constants in our lives. They come up every Sunday for family dinner, and Betty has been teaching Lucas how to bake. Last week, they baked chocolate chip cookies together, and Lucas boldly said, "I want to be both a doctor and a baker when I grow up." My parents' financial needs escalated to include a new water heater and house renovations. Then came the biggest one. "Sweetie," Dad called one Sunday, "your mother and I have been considering acquiring a new car. The payments would be costly for us, but with your new position." They named a character that would have made me choke a year ago. Now it was manageable. What followed, however, really struck a chord with me. "We'd pay you back, of course," Mom promised me, but we both knew they wouldn't. "We just need something dependable to drive Abigail to her job interviews. She's having a difficult time in that trading company. You're aware of how intense office politics can be." I agreed to help primarily out of habit. During our usual coffee meetup, Avery realized that something was amiss. "You seem tense," she commented, swirling her coffee. "Have your parents asked for money again?" I told her about the car, and she scowled. "You understand you don't owe them anything, right? Just because you're successful now doesn't mean you have to support their lifestyle." I dismissed her worries, assuring myself I had more than enough money. Wasn't it worth it if buying my parents' attention allowed Lucas to have grandparents in his life? But something felt wrong deep down, the way they'd casually discussed breaking off contact when I hesitated on a payment, and how their interest in Lucas appeared to be directly linked to my financial contributions. Last week, everything came to a head in unexpected ways, but that's another post I'll write when I'm ready. I have to leave now for my shift at the hospital, but I wanted to thank everyone for their kind words. Reading your stories about comparable events has made me feel less alone in this situation. Update 2. The recent occurrences I stated have dramatically altered my outlook on my relationship with my parents. I need to explain what happened during my emergency hospitalization last week. I was in the middle of a presentation at our weekly trauma team conference when the first wave of pain struck, sharp and unexpected, causing me to double over in mid-sentence. Our senior surgeon, Dr. Henderson, identified the symptoms immediately. "Classic appendicitis presentation. We need to get you into surgery." The irony of an ER doctor being an emergency patient did not escape my notice. My mind was racing with thoughts of Lucas as I prepared for surgery. He needed to get picked up from his robotics club in 2 hours. Tom and Betty were on a cruise, while Avery attended a conference in Chicago. Under normal circumstances, I would never approach my parents, but I was out of options. I called Mom when the nurses started my IV. It took 4 rings before she responded. "Mom, I'm in the hospital. My appendix needs to come out immediately. Could you please pick up Lucas from school? I'll need someone to watch him for a couple of days while I recover." The silence that ensued was deafening. "Oh honey, that's not possible," she exclaimed, her voice abruptly icy. "Your father and I are getting ready for Abigail's promotion party. She finally made junior executive at her company, and we're hosting 50 people at Luistro tonight." "Mom, please," I cried, attempting to maintain my voice despite the mounting anguish. "Lucas needs to be picked up in less than 2 hours. I don't have anyone else right now." The nurse adjusted my IV and gave me a compassionate look. "Well, that's not really our problem," she said harshly. "We're in a hurry to get to the restaurant. We can't be babysitting right now. Besides, you know how Lucas is. Always being so noisy and touching everything. It's quite a burden, really." I couldn't believe what I heard. "A burden? He's your grandson. After everything I've done for you, I've been paying your car loan for the past year, every time you needed money." She interrupted me with a laugh that froze me to the bone. "Oh, we won't be needing your handouts anymore. Abigail's new position comes with an excellent salary. She's going to help us instead of you." The call went dead. I lay in the hospital bed, phone still clamped to my ear, tears mixed with cold sweat on my cheeks. The nurse softly touched my arm. "Dr. Mitchell, do you have someone else we can call?" I called Avery with shaky hands. She picked up on the first ring. Before I could finish explaining, she was already in action. "Text me the school details. What time does he need to be picked up? Don't worry about anything else, I've already booked a trip back. We'll have a sleepover with my dog Max, won't we? Lucas enjoys playing with him anyway." "But your conference," I started protesting. "Stop it," Avery said forcefully. "Lucas is my nephew. The conference can wait. Focus on getting better, okay? Lucas will be okay with me, I promise." The next thing I remembered was waking up in recovery, disoriented from anesthesia. My first conscious thought was about Lucas, but there was already a text message from Avery waiting. Lucas is having a blast. We made pizza and created a blanket fort. Max is on guard. Don't worry about anything other than getting better. She uploaded images over the next 2 days, showing Lucas helping her bake cookies, falling asleep in a mound of plush animals, and building Lego hospitals, just like where mommy works. When I was discharged, Avery took me home, having already stocked my fridge, scheduled a cleaning service, and set up a cozy recuperation area in my living room. When I went in, Lucas ran to embrace me, stopping just short when he realized I was ouchy. Aunt Avery let me help make breakfast every morning. And Max slept in my blanket fort, he stated triumphantly. The next day, while recovering from surgery, I came upon dozens of images from Abigail's promotion celebration, which had been posted on the same day I had surgery. Mom and Dad were beaming triumphantly beside Abigail in her expensive dress, with champagne toasts and an exquisite cake that must have cost a lot. Everyone was laughing and partying while I lay in a hospital bed, their grandson disregarded as a burden. That night, after Lucas had fallen asleep, I sat down at my computer. First, I canceled the automatic monthly transfer to my parents' account for their car payment, and then I blocked them on all social media platforms. Looking at the framed photo on my desk of Lucas and me in the park, laughing together while Max chased bubbles around us, I felt something change inside me. I've been trying to buy my parents' love with money and tolerance for years, but real family, real love, is Avery flying back from her conference without hesitation, Tom and Betty FaceTiming Lucas every night while on their cruise, allowing him to show them his latest drawings, and Max the dog guarding my son's blanket fort while I'm in the hospital. I need some time to comprehend everything, but I'll post another update soon. For the time being, I'm focusing on recovery and being present for my son. The hospital granted me 2 weeks of medical leave, and Avery insists on staying with us until I'm back on my feet. Yesterday, she assisted Lucas in decorating my recovery room with his science fair paintings, to make it pretty like the hospital, he stated honestly. But better because it has my art. The realization that my son has never experienced the kind of conditional love I grew up with makes all of this worthwhile. He understands that he is loved for who he is rather than what he can contribute, and that may be the greatest gift of all. I'll post update 3 shortly on what happened when my parents discovered their monthly car payments had stopped, but for now, I need to relax and enjoy this tranquil time with my true family. Update 3 First and foremost, I'd like to express my gratitude to everyone for their encouraging comments and messages, which helped me persevere through what followed. As many of you predicted, my parents did not take the canceled car payments well. It began with a flood of voicemails and texts, each more desperate than the last. I blocked their numbers, but they started using different phones. The messages ranged from guilt-tripping, "How could you do this to your own parents?" to angry threats. "We'll tell everyone you're an ungrateful daughter." to tearful pleas, "We're going to lose the car because of you." There was no mention of Lucas in any of the messages, and there was no apology for how they treated us during my hospitalization. Everything was about them, their demands, their car, their feelings, their social status. Then came the flying monkeys, and distant relatives and family acquaintances began phoning to tell me how I had broken my parents' hearts. "They're getting older," my Aunt Susan admonished. "It's your duty as their daughter to help them." I wanted to question where their sense of duty was when their grandson needed them, but instead I simply blocked those numbers. Last Sunday, I was sitting in our backyard, watching Lucas and Max play fetch while Avery grilled burgers for lunch, when a car I didn't know drove into my driveway. Mom stepped out with her best church social smile. "Paula, sweetheart," she shouted out, using my first name, which she only does when she wants something. "How are you? We've been worried since you stopped returning our calls." I stayed sat, keeping my voice quiet for Lucas' sake. "What do you want, Mom?" She sat on the edge of a patio chair and smoothed her fashionable skirt. "Well, since you ask, your father and I are in a bit of a predicament with the vehicle payments," she began, letting out that theatrical sigh I knew so well. "You see, we assumed Abigail would help us with her new position and all, but when we asked her," she stopped for dramatic effect. "She just refused. Can you believe it? She said she had her own expenses to worry about after everything we'd done for her." The irony was nearly too much, and I tried not to chuckle. "Oh," she said, her voice lowering. "We were hoping you could start helping with the payments again, just until we figure something else out." When I didn't react right away, she said, "We could lose the car, you know, and then how would we go to all our social engagements?" This time, I couldn't contain my laughter. It spilled forth, sharp and bitter. "Mom, this isn't funny," she said. "We could lose the car." "Do you know what is funny?" I said. 3 months ago, while I was being rushed into emergency surgery, You labeled my son, your grandson, a burden. You couldn't be bothered to assist us since you were too busy celebrating Abigail's advancement. The same Abigail who now refuses to give you a cent. We were just busy that day. You know how these things are, she stuttered. No, Mom. I know precisely what it was. I was helpful when I paid your debts. Lucas and I became problematic once you believed Abigail could replace me as your personal ATM. That is not fair. We have always what? I cut her off. Have you always favored Abigail? Always treated me as if I were second best? Always took my assistance for granted until something better came along. Paula, please, her voice broke. You called my financial assistance handouts, remember? Right before you hung up on me while I was in the hospital? So, guess what? The handouts are done. I'm done attempting to purchase your love. I've had enough of you treating my baby as if he's less important than Abigail's luxury purses. I'm just finished. But the car? I stood up, fully free of the burden I'd carried my entire life. This is no longer my problem. Goodbye, Mom. Lucas dashed over, Max bouncing beside him. Mommy, see what I can do, he screamed, throwing the ball in a beautiful arc, which Max caught midway. Mom opened her lips to say something, but I interrupted her with a look, and she walked back to her borrowed car and drove away. That evening, we had our customary Sunday family meal with Tom, Betty, and Avery. Lucas proudly demonstrated his new ball-throwing technique as Tom barbecued and Betty set up the patio table. As I saw my son laugh as Avery taught him how to make s'mores, I felt at ease about my decision. Last week, Lucas brought home a family tree project from school, and he had put Tom and Betty right next to me, with Avery and Max nearby. Marcus had his own small branch, and we've maintained things friendly there with regular video chats and holiday visits. However, neither my parents nor Abigail appeared on the page. Is everything okay, Mommy? He asked, showing me his work. Miss Johnson said family trees generally include more members, but I told her these are all we need. I posted his drawing on the fridge next to a photo from his previous birthday party, with all of us gathered around the cake and real grins on everyone's faces. It's perfect, baby, I told him. Totally perfect. Sometimes the family you're born into isn't the family you're supposed to have, and you have to let go of the people who should have loved you in order to make place for the ones who do. It took me 42 years to grasp that lesson, but witnessing Lucas grow up in an environment filled with genuine, unconditional love was well worth the wait. Thank you to everyone who shared their tales in the comments. You gave me the strength I needed to break free from the cycle of conditional love and manipulation. Lucas and I are doing well because we are surrounded by folks who demonstrate what true family means every day.